I usually hit it from no. I was bad, wasn't it? Good evening, everyone. We're about to start this voting session for the Sumner County Board of Education for April 18th, 2023. I'm going to stand for a moment of silence and followed by the pledge of allegiance to our country's flag. If you'd like to join me, please feel free to do so. We are called to order. Mr. Johnson, you got the roll?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. First item on the agenda is approval of the regular agenda as presented. Is there a motion? Motion by Ms. Hayes, second by? Second by Ms. Hawkins. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding Director of Schools Employment Agreement. Is there a motion? Mr. Daniels.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the director agreement as written.
Motion has been made to approve it as written. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Wise. Discussion? Mr. Grant.
I have a couple of questions. If we just a point of clarification on some definitions. And there's quite a few, and so I might just ask one and see if anybody else has any. My first one is on number 6. Where it says the employee agrees to devote employees substantial work time. Can we get a definition on substantial? Like, is there any type of metric or rubric that defines substantial? A percentage of the day or hours of the day, days of the week, days of the year?
Are you asking for a legal description?
I'm asking what we would consider to be substantial.
Mr. Brisnell, can you address that?
Yes, excuse me. Substantial can be defined how you want it to be. Typically in contracts like this, it's difficult to define. It's certainly more than half, less than 100%, but it is a material term in terms of being substantially involved in the work of in the position as the director. But the board can define it more specifically than that, but it is typical to say substantial.
And so on the substantial work time, does that define a number of days that a director of schools is required to work? As, for example, like a teacher is required to work 200 days, right? 180 days plus, the administrative days and the professional development days and things of that nature. So is there a base on how many days a director of schools should have to work?
No, other than it's a full-time job year-round.
Is there anything that defines what a full-time job year-round in here is?
Mr.
260 days.
Our full-time status is for a person who is not a teacher, the 260-day employee. That does not, that includes all holidays and obviously the they're paid. Myself, other employees who are paid on based on 260 days.
Okay. I mean, so just kind of give clarification on my question. When this is sort of just a generic teacher's contract when we offer a position to a brand new teacher, and it defines specifically that your teaching contract is for 200 days. So I just thought maybe it would be a good idea to have that definition in a contract for the largest paid position in the county.
Mr. Chairman, can I add to that? I do feel like, too, one of the things that needs to be addressed with that is that when you're a director of schools, you're technically on call 365 days a year and 24 hours a day. If it's on the weekend and something happens, the director's being called. If it's Christmas morning, I mean, this past Christmas we had buildings that had maintenance issues and stuff. He's being called. So it's not technically a Monday through Friday 8 to 5 position. It's a 365 24-hour position.
And so it's-
Mr. Gregory.
I've heard it defined one time at as many hours as you're awake.
Probably true. Probably true. Thank you, Mr. Gregory. You done? Turn your light off there. Mr. Lancaster.
Yeah, the only thing I would like to make an amend for is on item 5. Wait, let me make sure I'm reading this right. We might have got off on the wrong page. Sorry. Item 8, where we do the sum equal to 2 years. I mean, to me, we should keep it in line with what we did with Dr. Phillips and have 18 months. I have not been. I asked, why we changed that, and that's the only thing. So I would like to make a motion to amend it to 18 months, just to be the same that we had for Dr. Phillips, and also so we don't set some sort of precedent for the future contracts with any other directors that we're always doing a 2-year deal.
Motion's been made to amend the contract, section 8, you said?
Section 8, sorry.
8.
It's the line that basically reads, upon employer's termination without cause or the employee's termination for cause, employer shall pay to the employee a sum equal to 2 years. Like I said, the one with Dr. Phillips was 18 months, and that's, like I said, that's.
Motion's been made as stated. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lacy. Discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Johnson, we'll call the roll on the, this is on the amendment. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lacy.
Is there a reason why we changed it from 18 months to 24? Or?
Just a negotiation, we thought it was reasonable. So of course, it comes to the board for a vote, so I thought it was reasonable to put in there.
All right, Ms. Hayes?
Wait a minute, with Mr. Graham.
Yeah, I
I'm sorry.
was just going to give my 2 cents on this discussion. I personally would like to see it at 6 months. I understand you're in a position this large and this important that you want to have a safeguard for the director of schools, but we've also heard over and over and over and over and over again how hard it is to find people for these positions. So I'm sure whoever our director of schools is, if there was a separation from us, 6 months would be more than enough to help them bounce back on their feet. But that's just my 2 cents.
Like I say, all I want to do is keep it consistent with what we currently got. So, I mean, if Mr. Graham wants to make a motion to amend my motion, he's welcome to it, but that's where I'm at right now.
Okay, we have the motion on the floor. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir. Ms. Hayes?
No.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews? No. Mr. King?
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins?
No.
Mr. Daniels?
No.
Mr. Wise?
No.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory?
No.
Mr. Lacy?
Yes.
Chairman Brewer?
No.
Motion fails 7-4.
We're back to the main motion. Call the roll on that one, main motion.
Yes, sir. Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
Oh, no, I've got my light on. Yeah.
Mr. King?
So I'd like to propose an amendment to make this a 2-year contract instead of a 4-year, ending June 30th, 2025, rather than 2027. And I don't know if I need to do another amendment or another motion. I mean, tied to that, I'd like to have the pay reduced to $190,000 with a review in 2 years for a raise. I think that's more of a standard contract. Now, if the candidate was moving from out of state, I would understand a 4-year, but our candidate is local. I think a 2-year contract with a renegotiation for an increase in pay at that time is a sufficient and reasonable proposition. So I move that we make this a 2-year contract ending 2025 at $190,000 with a renegotiation to be established at that time.
Mr. King, you wanted June 2025, that was your motion?
Yes.
Ended in June 2025, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Brown. Discussion? Mr. King, your light's still on. All right, call the roll.
Ms. Hayes.
No. No.
Mr. Lancaster. Ms. Andrews.
No.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins.
No.
Mr. Daniels.
No.
Mr. Wise.
No.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory.
No.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
Chairman Brewer.
No.
Motion fails 8-3.
I have another question. So number 11, the school board shall evaluate the director annually and publicly report the evaluation. Is there anything within that evaluation that coincides with student achievement, such as TCAP scores or test scores?
I looked at that form. We have a form that we use.
I think it's a general question about, like, I don't think there's anything that's tied to if you make X score, it's Y. Like, I think it's more like the director oversees adequate academic performance or something like that. But we could send you a copy of the evaluation and you could see it.
The reason I bring that up is, our teachers are held to a standard where 60% of their overall evaluation comes from the TCAP plus student achievement scores. And so I think it would only be fair for the leader of all the teachers to have the same rubric in the employment agreement. And I would think that 60% of the total weight of this employment agreement should be the same.
Are you making a motion?
I would like to move to add, under number 11, the board shall evaluate the director annually and publicly report the evaluation. There should be a sentence that says something along the lines of, this shall include a weight of 60% given to student achievement.
Okay, motion's been made as stated. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lacy. Discussion?
Yeah, I've got a question. How would that be paid out? Are you considering that a bonus? Is he getting paid 40% of the salary during the year and then a bonus check with the 60% once a year? Is that your expectation?
No, I think it would be purpose of the evaluation itself. If it says the school board shall evaluate the director annually, so what's the outcome of that evaluation? What happens if there's low scores on that evaluation? What action is taken?
I think then we as a board can make a decision to look at termination.
Well, then I think a portion of the evaluation needs to be test scores, since it's so pressurized on our teachers. It should also reflect our director.
I have no problem with the evaluation having test scores listed or performance. When we're talking about, I think your motion was regarding compensation, so I was just trying to clarify how that would be laid out.
Well, no, my motion is specifically to number 11, which says the school board shall evaluate the director annually and publicly report the evaluation. It doesn't say anything about compensation.
Okay, so you just want on the evaluation something to do with
Yeah, I think we as a board, and 60% may be too much. I mean, I'm willing to negotiate that as the person who made the motion, but I think there needs to be an absolute defined percentage of the evaluation that is strictly based on TCAP scores and on student achievement at all of our schools.
Okay, yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Graham, just thinking that through, that really should be something that goes to, you should have that on a study session and have the
Well, then we should have had this contract on a study session.
contract,
You can't come to me and say we should have something on a study session when I just received this 4 days ago and now we're discussing it for the very first time ever in a voting session.
discussion. Mr. Lancaster, I'm sorry, Ms. Andrews.
So what I think actually the discussion is there's two different discussions. Is this current discussion is on the contract, and I, like Mr. Daniels, don't have a problem with part of the evaluation if we want to add measures in there for testing or TCAP or whatever. But that's its own discussion. I think that's what Mr. Brewer is saying, that needs to be brought. So we can bring the evaluation tool itself to a study session for us to decide this is how we are going to evaluate the director. That's a separate document to the contract.
With all due respect, this is an employment agreement, and this is expectations.
Right, so it says
and
the board shall evaluate the director annually. The board also has a responsibility to set what that evaluation is.
I don't think it's fair, but I don't think it's fair to our candidate if we don't lay out what the expectations are before we offer the agreement. Right? So it was,
it can be changed every year. We can change the expectations every year. We can look at our evaluation tool. We can change that every year, but then but you don't change a contract for that. You say
but see, everything in this contract.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order. Who has the floor?
I do.
Ms. Andrews has the floor.
I've never relinquished.
I believe she's the one that's speaking.
Chair called on Ms. Andrews.
I yield to Ms. Andrews.
So this past Friday, I just went to TSBA and did training. And this is part of what we discussed. And so these are two separate. So in the contract, we're saying we will evaluate the director annually. And then separately, you would develop what that evaluation tool is. And you would say, okay, we have a contract. This is what our expectations are going to be. And so we can do that. His contract begins July 1. We can, between now and then, say, hey, this is what our expectations are going to be from July 1 when you take the position until, June 30th, at that point, we're gonna use this that we've set up, and we're gonna see how it measures up. But this is what our expectations are going to be. So he knows going into the year, these are the points we're wanting you to hit. But to add all of that language into the contract, I think gets into the minutia of it. And again, it's two separate. You're talking about a contract, and you're talking about an evaluation tool.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Lancaster.
Yeah, so we already have a policy, 5.803, evaluation of director of schools, which does mention success in a program. So I'm trying to compromise here with everybody, but if we just, add language to include that this specific line, number 11, reverts back to policy 5.803 instead of just this Tennessee Code 49202-203, it would be my opinion that then that would require us to look at what our policy is, and then we could, in future meetings, which like I say right now, it says the director's success is improving student achievement. It talks all about student achievement and test scores on here. We can beef that up as needed in study session and in future meetings. That's my suggestion. But again, it's not my motion, and you guys do what you want to do from that standpoint.
Mr. Lancaster. Mr. Graham.
So this is an employment agreement. This is we offer and you provide. And this has a whole lot of we offer and a whole lot of you provide. But I will concede, I will remove my motion if we can, in good faith, agree to, before this contract takes place, review that policy and add objective language as to what those scores should be. Because I think that needs to happen before a candidate begins their first day of work. I don't have a whole lot of faith that 6 months from now, after we know what scores are going to be, that we'll have an objective discussion on whether or not that should be applicable to his review or her review going forward. So if I can in good faith get an agreement from you, Chairman, that this can be on the agenda, this policy can be on the agenda prior to the July 1st start date, I will withdraw my motion.
Glad to put it on the agenda.
All right, thank you. Withdrawn.
Motion's withdrawn. We're back to the main motion. Mr. King.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're getting at. It's like there's, and I'm just making a brief comment on that. There's not much tied to performance in this contract. It's, in fact, it's an employee's dream contract. Anybody would sign this. There's not a whole lot of protection for the employer. A couple of things. First, on item 6, it says the board will support employee and not interfere with his ability to carry out his duties as prescribed by Tennessee law. I'm assuming that is in reference to Tennessee Code Annotated 49-2301, where it outlines the duties of the director of schools. But I just feel it's a little redundant to add this clause in here, this statement. First of all, the board will support employee. That's very subjective, very ambiguous. What does that mean? In what way do we support the employee? And then secondly, interfere. In what ways, and I'm going to need a definition on that. What does interfere constitute? Obviously, I'm on the board. I need to know how not to interfere. And so at this point, I don't know that. I would recommend, and before I make a motion to amend this, I just want to have an answer to that question.
Mr. President?
Well, interfere is not a legal term. It is a word that is defined how it's defined. In this context, you're looking at the director of schools having a long list of statutory duties that this board must ensure that he or she follows. And that's the spirit of this language, is to say this board has a duty to ensure that its director complies with those statutory duties, and that this board will not inhibit him or her from doing that. That's the concept.
I mean, I think that's kind of obvious, though. I don't know if we need that as a statement. Why was this not in other contracts? I've looked back at Dr. Phillips's contracts. I've looked at other contracts. I've not seen this. So why now? Why is this inserted into here? Why this statement at this point?
Well, if you're asking me, I didn't make the decision to put this in here.
Okay.
I think this from a legal standpoint, and that language complies with Section 301.
Okay.
Through the process of negotiation, once again, we felt it was reasonable. And so it's
Just sounds like is there an anticipation of somebody interfering with his duties?
I have no idea. But this would ensure that they didn't, if they wanted to. I felt it was reasonable. You can vote it up, vote it down. I mean,
I understand that. It's just very curious to me that someone felt a need to put that in there. So I'm going to move that we strike that statement. And so I motion that we strike the statement. The board will support employee and not interfere with his ability to carry out his duties as prescribed by Tennessee law. So I move to remove that statement.
motion's been made as stated. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Graham. Discussion?
I have a question. So in the process of negotiations, were there any examples given of what interfere could be?
No.
I don't know if this is exactly what you're looking for, but I think it's important to have the reminder of the school board member oath of office. One of the terms, it says, "I hereby swear that I will focus on the policy work of the board and monitor progress on the indicators of success in our strategic plan, leaving the day-to-day operation of the district to the superintendent and staff." And that is stating what the contract is stating, pretty much, that the board won't interfere with the superintendent doing his or her job. And also in the school board policy manual, code 1.1, it states, all powers of the board lie in its action as a group. Therefore, individual board members exercise their authority over school system affairs only as they vote to take action as at an official meeting of the board. In other words, an individual board member can't go to the superintendent and tell him what to do. The only voice that board members have is through our vote.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. King?
So that just brings me back. It seems redundant. We already have this in the oath. We already have this laid out. I don't think we necessarily need it in a contract. It just seems very unnecessary to me. So I just want to comment that before we vote on my amendment.
Ms. Hawkins?
And what's wrong with saying it twice instead of once?
So if there's an allegation that a school board member did interfere, who makes that determination?
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lacy.
Who was did our Dr. Phillips contract in 2019?
That would be Don Long and Danny Hale.
So Mr. Presnell was not our lawyer then?
No.
Like I said, I believe we should support the director in every.
Did you say 2019? I'm sorry.
I guess the contract I have here, I thought this was 2019 for Dr. Phillips.
The most recent one you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the most recent one, that would be, I believe Ted Wise and Andy Daniels negotiated that.
Like I said, I believe we should support the director and stand behind him, but I also feel the need that I should stand up for my citizens, even if that means I've got to go against the director and at least share my feelings and my frustrations. It doesn't mean I have to be quiet and let him do his job without my input. I just feel like it's a given we should support our director and stand behind him the best we can, but I also feel it's our duty as school board people that we should stand up for what our citizens want. So I would be for striking this down. Like I said, he is our employer, or we are employing him, but like he works for us. So to say that we would not interfere, to me, it just seems it shouldn't be there.
Ms. Lady? Mr. Graham?
Chairman Brewer, when I asked the question who would determine if it was interference, that wasn't rhetorical. As a point of information, since you're the one that negotiated the contract, I would actually like to know an answer to that question since you've included it in the agreement.
Well, everything is a board decision, so if there's an accusation, then someone brings that to the board and the board decides. Ms. Hawkins?
And just in response to Mr. Lacy, yes, we do represent our constituents, and the proper way to do that is to come to the board meeting and discuss it with board members, and then we vote in order to act upon things. We don't individually go places and act individually. We are a board. The only voice we have is yes or no, majority vote. And that's the way we act. We don't, I can't go to a school and just tell the principal what to do. I don't have that authority. What I can do, if I have a problem, I bring it to the board. I put it on the agenda, we discuss it, and then we vote. And whatever the majority vote is, that's what happens. So you do have a voice. You do have representation. There's just a proper way to do it.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Rule by rule, we only speak twice, 10 minutes each. We've spoke about 4 times each. Let's make this the last one, Mr. Graham.
So I understand we don't act alone.
Point of order, no, you're wrong about that. Asking questions, according to Robert's rules, asking questions, making short suggestions is not considered a speech or a debate.
No, but it also gives you 10 minutes and 2 times to speak on each agenda item.
Not if it's questions. Asking questions, and making short suggestions is not considered a speech. I can read it. I can pull it up.
Mr. Graham.
I appeal the ruling of the chair. Well,
Mr. Graham has the floor.
My point of order supersedes that.
No, it does not. Mr. Graham has the floor.
Okay.
I was just going to make a quick point that if all we can do is vote on policy and vote as a board, then we probably shouldn't be going into libraries on our own and pulling books using our pass to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mr. King.
Yeah, so merely asking questions or making brief suggestions is not counted as speaking in debate. This is from Robert's rules. Okay. So I don't think what he was doing was constituted more than 2 speeches. So, thank you.
to the, I'm sorry, Mr. Lacy.
Is there a board policy that you're quoting to where he can't speak more than 4
Robert's Rules
times?
of Order, sir.
He's got Robert's Rules of Order book. Do we not follow Robert's rules?
We do. We're not going to debate Robert's Rules of Order in this meeting tonight. We have a motion on the floor and a second. We're in discussion on that, and we're going to stay with that.
Well, if we're going to follow Robert's rules, maybe we should follow Robert's rules.
We are following them, sir.
And I was going to ask you a question on the contract. So I guess I'm new to the school board, but do you negotiate the contract? Basically, this is your contract. I guess you would take ownership of it. What I would have thought that somehow we would have got together and discussed it as a board instead of just one more board member making the contract. Did you get any advice from anyone, or did you do it, or did you have somebody do it for you?
With the advice of council, we did it, and it's the chairman's job to do that.
Who's counsel?
Mr. President.
Well, he just said that he did what y'all told him to do, right? Is that you?
We took all that stuff to him. We negotiated it, took all that stuff to him, and had him write it up, yes. We're on the amended motion to take the line out of the contract. Mr. Johnson?
Yes. Ms. Hayes?
Will you read the motion, please?
Yes, ma'am. The motion is to strike the statement, "The board will support employee and not interfere with his duties."
No.
Mr. Lancaster?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
No.
Mr. King?
I'm sorry. The motion is to strike it?
Yes, remove the line. Yes, sir. Ms. Hawkins?
No.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
No.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Gregory?
Uh-oh.
Mr. Lacy?
No.
Yes.
Chairman Brewer?
No.
Motion fails 6-5.
All right, back to the main motion. Sorry, I didn't have my light on. Back to the main motion. Mr. King.
Yeah, I'd like to address item 8. And I had late in the day, I had emailed this to Chairman Brewer and Jeremy and Mr. Presnell. I don't know if you all received that, but okay. I would like to replace some language, and I have it written out here. It's quite a bit. I'll go ahead and read it. So item 8 right now on the contract, it says the employer may terminate this agreement for cause, which is defined as an act that results in a criminal conviction or one involving moral turpitude, fraud, or intentional unethical business conduct by employee during employee's employment. I would like to revise that statement just to make it a little more specific and to protect the board. I feel like there's not a whole lot of protection for the employer. There's a lot of protection for the employee in this contract. I showed this contract to an attorney that works in HR, and his comment to me was that if I were to present a contract like this to my owner, I would be relieved of my duties. That was his statement. So I feel like we need some more protection, and I would like to add the employer may term. This is what I would like to add as a supplement or as a replacement to that first statement there, the first sentence. The employer may terminate this agreement for cause upon proof of improper, unethical, or unprofessional conduct or misconduct, conviction of a crime, any act of moral turpitude, dishonesty, fraud, inefficient service, incompetence, insubordination, or neglect of duty as defined in Title 49-5-501, Section 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the Tennessee Code annotated as enacted or hereafter amended, material breach of this contract, failure to follow Sumner County Board of Education policies or handbook, violation of local, state, or federal law, or for any reason established by state law. And then that's where the rest of the Section 8 would pick up.
All right, motion's been made.
Well, do I need to repeat that? Okay. I sent it to you, and
Yeah, it's not in my email.
it's not in your email?
No, sir.
Okay.
It's in
You want me to give you a copy of it, and then? Okay. Sure, I'll read it again. So,
Is that replacing just that first sentence?
just the first sentence, yeah. The employer may terminate this agreement for cause upon proof of improper, unethical, or unprofessional conduct or misconduct. Okay. Unprofessional conduct or misconduct, conviction of a crime, any act of moral turpitude, dishonesty, fraud, inefficient service, incompetence, insubordination, or neglect of duty as defined in Title 49-5-501, Section 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the Tennessee Code Annotated, as enacted or hereafter amended. Material breach of this contract, failure to follow school board or Sumner County School Board or Sumner County Board of Education policies or handbook, violation of local, state, or federal law, or for any reason established by state law, and then it picks up with the rest of the Section 8.
The motion has been made. Have you heard it? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Graham. Discussion. Ms. Hawkins?
The one thing that's missing out of that is during employees' employment. So I don't know if that's meaning that you can go back in time before the employment and find any of these things and consider that a cause for termination. But I would think you would need to include during employees' employment in that statement.
Is that a motion to amend it?
Motion to amend.
Okay. Is there a motion? Is there a second on the amendment? Second by Ms. Andrews. Discussion on the amendment. Mr. Graham?
Are we referring to the employment period that starts beginning this agreement or employment with Sumner County Schools as a whole?
Yes. What's your motion? I'm talking about in that sentence that's being replaced, it gives terms for being terminated, but it doesn't include the words during employees' employment, which is in the sentence now. And so that's being omitted in the amended version, and I think it needs to be included. It gives the behaviors have to happen during the employment period.
You done, Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster?
I don't know if I got them all, but I mean, but if so, I'm just trying to figure out what you're saying first, because I'm still lost. I mean, I got bad stuff of what Stephen said, but what you're saying, are you saying that, or if we find out that our director, whoever that may be, in this case, this contract deals with Dr. Lang, but are you saying if we find this improper, unethical, whatever, name some of them words you said.
Conviction of a crime.
Whatever, was part of his employment starting July the 1st, or are we saying just since he's been with Sumner County? That's what I'm asking. That's what, I don't understand what employment, I do understand what employees' employment, but are we saying employees' employment with Sumner County Schools, period, or with Sumner County Schools starting July, you know, because it's, for most, if we had hired somebody that came in from somewhere else, yeah, I understand, we're not going to go, you know, whatever. But if it's with us, well, he's been with us, so that's what what does that mean, is all I'm asking.
I'm looking at the sentence as it's currently in the agreement.
Well, maybe that's what I'm asking.
And it says the employer may terminate this agreement for cause, all the bad things it lists, during the employee's or intentional unethical business conduct by employee during employee's employment. Why is that in there currently? And why are we taking it out if we amend?
I ran out of room on paper, so I don't know why. I'm not
It's outlining a term during which those bad things happen. And I mean, it's open for discussion about whether that's important. I'm just pointing out that's missing from the amended proposal.
Well, I think Ms. Hayes had her line on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ms. Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because there are a lot of words added. So, Mr. King, you did not put in your statement during employee's employment. Did you not put that in there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, it is in this one. And I'm assuming since we're talking about a contract with dates, the employee's employment is for this contract starting July 1. Is there any reason we need to put dates in that, in this written number 8? Because the body is the contract, and assumptions may be wrong here. Do we need to get more specific? Employee during employee's employment, meaning this contract. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
Are you wanting to, Mr. President?
Yes, the way the contract is currently drafted, it is conduct occurring during the term of this contract. So for the 4-year period, if this term is approved. And yeah, so, and the for cause is generally tied broadly to egregious misconduct. Mr. King read off several of those. Others are sounds like the amendment includes broadly more laws. Is that included as well, as opposed to the conduct in section 501 that you read? Because those are defined terms in the statute.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, I mean, we can condense that down. I mean, some of the things that are described here, it says section 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of that, which section 3 is conduct unbecoming to a member of the teaching profession. 5 is incompetence. Means being incapable, lacking adequate power, capacity, or ability to carry out the duties and responsibilities of the position. This may appeal to physical, mental, educational, emotional, or other personal conditions. It may include lack of training or experience, evident unfitness for service, a physical, mental, or emotional condition making the teacher unfit to instruct or associate with children, and the inability to command respect from subordinates. Number 6 is inefficiency. Means below the standards of efficiency maintained by others currently employed by the board. 7 is insubordination, and then there's, again, I could list all of them. Neglect of duties, number 8. So we can condense this down to, so my the way I have it spelled out, I spell out each of those. And then as defined in Title 49-5, 501. So,
I would just add that if you just reference those statutory sections, the code already defines those terms as you read, and stop it there, then you have a defined set of terms.
okay.
I got it. Oh,
All right, so, but
right, sure.
I can come back to that. We're still on her amendment.
Well, I just got a
So-
question for the lawyer if I ever get it. Or, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Lancaster.
Just so I'm clear, employer, again, I watch a lot of Netflix, so, you know. You're telling, so basically what you're saying is if this is completely just, you know, a what if we found out that Dr. Langford is secretly working for the cartel, we would have to, you know, this would not violate his contract because it happened beforehand. You know, he stops July. That's all I'm saying. I mean, that seems kind of weird to me that we would be like, oh, we still got to pay you 2 years. I'm not, again, that's how crazy it is, but that's what's in there, right? Just.
Yes, sir. If the phrase during the employee's employment refers to the term of this contract.
Okay.
So conduct happening during this contract.
That's just what I wanted to understand, because that's what I thought you were saying.
Ms. Lancaster, I will bring up too that whatever amendments we make, this bilateral contract, it has to be agreed to by Mr. Langford as well. So just because we changed something tonight doesn't mean
I'm not
it's
saying
changed.
it's cartel.
No, I just wanted to throw that out there, you know, to let everybody know that it's bilateral, so he has to agree with this as well. Mr. Gregory.
All these items that have been brought up, they're judgmental. They're very judgmental. I mean, I think the contract is fine.
Mr. Gregory, Mr. Lacy.
So I guess with that language in there, just say if he was in the cartel and he was money laundering, a week before he became the director of schools, we couldn't remove him from office. Mr. Presnell, I guess per the contract, we would not be able to do anything about it. If the amendment is in this contract.
I'm sorry, if Mr. King's amendment?
Or Ms. Hawkins, I guess.
Ms. Hawkins.
During this term, if it happened before Dr. Langford becomes the director of school, say a week before he's money laundering or whatever for the cartel, can we remove him for cause?
If
Or
he's-
any federal crime?
Sure, if he is, the criminal conviction remains in there. So if he's
Okay.
convicted of a crime during the term of this contract, it's a for-cause termination.
Well, I meant before, say it happened a month before or 6 months before. We find out about it 3 months after he's the director of schools. There's nothing we can do about it as a board?
Are you talking about the criminal conviction part?
Yes, sir.
If he's criminally convicted of something before this contract is signed, then that would not be a for-cause termination. You could still terminate the contract. It'd just be without cause.
Ms. Andrews.
That's what I'm trying. I mean, I feel like obviously there's got to be language in there for you know, specific reasons and so forth to protect the board and so forth. I do see where the verbiage of during employees' employment. I see both sides. I'll say that because especially without having it in there, if we've got stuff on here that's, you know, as far as dishonesty, well, are you going to go back and say, well, when he was 10 years old, he lied to me, so now we got to fire him? Like, because it's outside the scope of his employment. So there is something to be said about saying it being during employees' employment. But I also understand if there is a serious allegation that has been made, such as a criminal charge, and it stems from something that happened prior to this particular contract, where we should then be able to, it should be a for cause. So I see both sides of it, as far as what, of how that should be handled. I feel as though I could support the removal of that particular language during the employee's employment, just so that it does give it a broader. But I'm not sure that I can support Mr. King's amendment, because I do feel like, I mean, we had questions as far as what some of this other terminology means, but we're going to then just say dishonesty, insubordination, incompetence, like who's going to govern. I know there are some legal terms that goes by, but also then who's going to determine that, and to what scope will that be done. So
Ms. Andrews, Mr. Graham?
I think per our previous answer, the board will determine everything as we vote as a board. I have a question for Ms. Hawkins. Would you be willing to put in your language something along the lines of, with an exception of criminal conviction? And that would solve a lot of those issues.
As of today, I do not believe that our candidate has been convicted. And if we find out after the signing of the agreement that that's not true, then that he would be guilty of dishonesty during the term of employment. Are you suggesting that he's been convicted of a crime and nobody knows it?
I was just simply trying to move this along.
Ms. Hawkins, Mr. King?
So Title 49.5, 501 does give definitions of those, some of that terminology that she had mentioned. The other thing is, this is not accusing our candidate. I'm just, and no, it's not judgmental because it's not directed at anyone. I would want this language if it was any candidate, number one. We just need further protection. Someone's shaking their head out there. Yeah, no, this is not about him. This is simply about protecting the employer. And from any of this type of conduct, I would recommend this change to any candidate. This is actually, I didn't just make this up. I pulled this from several, actually, I looked at 2 other contracts that had this language in it for director of schools that are currently employed in our state. And I think it's pretty. It gives the employer protection. I know we're talking about your amendment, but I just wanted to say that. But I am concerned about the employment period, and it's not about our candidate. It's about any candidate. Should it be discovered that there is some kind of illegal activity prior to employment, this contract right now basically says that the only thing we can do is terminate without cause, and then we'd have to pay 2 years, is my understanding, which I think is an issue. If we have somebody that has, is under investigation, or they're found guilty of something they did prior to this employment agreement, I don't believe we owe them 2 years compensation. I don't think we should reward them with $400,000. So that's my concern on the amendment.
Let me clarify. If there was previous conduct that results in a post-contract conviction, then that would be grounds by for-cause termination.
Wait, say that again.
Sure. If there was past conduct that results in a conviction after this contract is entered, then it would be a for-cause termination.
I think my concern is in some of the language, and I think one of your stipulations was unprofessional behavior. Was that unprofessional conduct? That's very interpretive, which I am concerned that there may be someone going back a few years and finding something that they think is unprofessional conduct, which is prior to this date of contract and could be used in a way and interpreted and used after the date of contract. And so because there is sort of this gray area that it could go in many different directions, I'm concerned about just being able to go back and like Ms. Andrews said, to go back to when you were in high school. Did you tell a lie to somebody? Okay, now you're dishonest. I think there needs to be a specific timeline under which these terms fall.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. Mr. Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, you're an attorney of law, right?
Yes.
At least I hope you are. That's what we hired you to be. This contract from start to finish, you helped put together. I believe in trusting those who are professionals. I'm not an attorney. Matter of fact, I'm so bad at the law, its speed limit says 55, I think it might be okay to be 65. Are you comfortable that the school system, this board, is protected in any aspect of law or breaking thereof? And are you also comfortable that the employee is sufficiently protected in this contract as a whole?
Mr. President.
Mr. Wise, my role here is to review the terms of the contract and ensure that it is in compliant with the law. For example, the Tennessee Code puts a maximum contract period for directors at 4 years. So if this board wanted to approve a 5-year contract, I would advise that is improper. Anywhere between 1 month and 4 years, though, I don't have an opinion on, because I would say that's proper, any period of that amount of that time. And so that's the way I reviewed this contract. And in my view, as I told Chairman Brewer when presented to me, that this is compliant. If there are amendments that this board wants to make tonight, I will provide counsel on those as well.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Graham.
I just need one more point of clarification on if a conviction happens during the course of the contract. Once again, I don't know of any wrongdoing. It's my job to protect, to be a good steward of our funds, and so $400,000 is something that we need to protect. So it says the employer may terminate this agreement for cause, which is defined and goes through the acts, as an act that results in a criminal conviction. It doesn't say if there is a criminal conviction. It says as an act that results in criminal conviction during the employment period. And so I think that we may be wrong on that.
Mr. Graham.
Can I ask? Sure.
All right. Mr. Lacy.
So you really, I would like to ask the attorney, you really didn't answer his question. Do you think this contract is fair for the board and the director equally?
Yes, Mr. Lacy, it's not my job to opine on those negotiations and how those play out in terms of fair to one party or the other. I represent the board and I advise it on the legalities of this. If the parties believe it's fair for each other, as long as it's legally compliant, then that would be my legal advice. As to paragraph 8, it seems to me to strike what the goal here is to strike a balance between there are a certain set of egregious acts that if a director of schools committed should result in a for-cause termination that would not require this board to pay out any type of severance. There is then a separate set of conduct if this board became unhappy with the director's performance, not because of any egregious conduct, but just failure to perform to this board's satisfaction, then it would be a without cause termination that would then kick in the severance period. So that's the balance that's trying to be struck here in terms of what is that set of egregious conduct that should result in a no severance for cause termination versus just more of a performance-based termination or ending of the contract that should kick in where the severance should kick in this board's judgment. And so that's the balance that was struck here, and I think that's what's before the board. But in my view, it complies with the law.
Mr. President, Mr. Lacy, Mr. Daniels.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions for our board attorney. Number one, this contract is for an employment agreement between the board and the director of schools. Currently, is Dr. Lankford, or the candidate for this position, an employee of the board or an employee of the school system? Because right now it's my understanding the only employee that we have a contract with is Dr. Phillips.
Until July.
Well, yes, but the teachers have contracts as well.
Correct, under the Board of Education, the Sumner County School System, correct. But their employment agreement is with Sumner County Schools. Obviously, the expectation is that the director of schools oversees with his HR department and everyone else to make sure that they meet whatever expectations are. But currently, from a contractual standpoint, we have a contract with Dr. Phillips, and the school system has a contract with the teachers as employees. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Mr. Daniels, I've not reviewed that in a while.
The second question I have is if someone were convicted of a crime, I know we're getting into the minutia of during the employee's employment, and I go back to the fact that, again, I don't think currently the board has an agreement or a contract with anyone except Dr. Phillips at this point. But if someone were to be convicted of a crime, would they not also typically lose their teacher's license, which would then make them ineligible to serve in the capacity as director of schools?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Daniels, thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, I want to just touch on one thing that Mr. Presnell said. So the for cause is, as listed, the egregious act, but there is also, just like with other employees, teachers, certified staff, that because it says in here, like if they are not doing the duties within this contract, so part of that contract is an evaluation. And so if we go through there and he is not satisfied, that with the evaluation over a period of time, we have to give the opportunity to make that right and so forth. But if it's a continuous pattern, then I would assume, so Mr. President, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but my assumption would be then if there's a pattern of that and the board has taken steps to say, hey, this needs to be rectified, and then it's not rectified, that would then become a for cause termination because the covenants of the contract are not being satisfied.
Okay, I'm not sure I followed all of that.
Okay.
You're asking if the director under the contract that's before the board now, before any amendments,
That there are some other extenuating circumstances besides just the egregious acts. I feel like anybody looks at it and says, if they're convicted of a crime, if there's some like that that's common sense. That makes sense. Yes, we can terminate. But if there are some other extenuating circumstances as far as, you know, they're not showing up to work, they're not, you know, doing the other things that we have laid out within the contract, so they're not upholding their end of the bargain, and that is documented just like you would do any other type of employee, and can say, hey, it would then become a for cause versus a not for cause. Would that be correct?
I would say it differently.
Okay.
I would say let's not confuse these terms for cause and without cause in terms of not having a good reason to do something. Those terms are in this contract to trigger or not trigger the severance provision. So there is so that's what this is tied to. This board could have several legitimate reasons for wanting to terminate a contract with the director, all of which would be performance-based and all of which could be legitimate. But, so you have a good reason to do so. That doesn't mean that it's a for-cause termination then, if that makes sense. Those terms are in there to trigger the severance or no severance.
Mr. President? Okay.
One more, and just, it's the conviction, it's when a conviction is, whether it would be, I mean, obviously if there was a conviction today, it would be void because he would no longer, obviously would be in jail probably and wouldn't be able to serve anyways. But it's, if the crime happened prior to, but the conviction happened within the agreement, it still stands as far as a for cause.
Yes.
The crime happened prior, but the conviction happened within, it's still considered for cause. It's the timing of the conviction, not.
Yes, if
I mean,
there's a criminal conviction during the term of this contract, you can terminate it for cause.
All right. We're on the amendment. Mr. Johnson, would you restate the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little bit muddied water over here. Do we have two amendments? Are we going to handle both amendments at the same time, or are we voting first on Ms. Hawkins' amendment?
We're voting on Ms. Hawkins' amendment, then we
Thank
go to Mr. King's amendment, and then back to the main motion. Anything of which is not concrete tonight, it would have to go back and be renegotiated with Mr. Langford. So, are we ready? On the,
If we vote yes on this, it's to add or.
we're getting ready to have Mr. Johnson.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson's fixing.
What we do.
Yeah, he's fixing to restate the motion.
Okay, we are voting on Ms. Hawkins' amendment to add to Mr. King's amendment the language to say during the employee's contract term. And with that, Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster? Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. King?
No.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
No.
Mr. Gregory? Mr. Lacy?
No.
Chairman Brewer?
Yes.
Amendment passes 7-4.
All right, now we're on the Mr. King's motion. Mr. King?
Yeah, so just after some of the discussion, I'd like to amend my amendment. And I would like to strike a few words from my original language, if that's okay. First, I would like to strike unprofessional.
No, you can just amend your original.
Okay, yeah, I'll amend the original, okay. Well, my original was an amendment. Okay. Okay, well, here's what I want to do. Okay, here's what I want to do. I want to strike unprofessional conduct. So it'll read, the employer may terminate this agreement for cause upon proof of improper, unethical misconduct, comma, okay, conviction of a crime, any act of moral turpitude, dishonesty, fraud, and here's the change, any infraction as defined in Title 49-5-501, Section 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8. In other words, I just took out what's already listed in that code. Of the Tennessee Code annotated, and that's it. That's really the only change. Everything else is the same. So I'm striking unprofessional conduct. I'm striking inefficient service, incompetence, insubordination, and neglect of duty, because all of those are within that Title 49 Code 5-501. So that would be the change.
Ms. Hayes.
Mr. King, will you read that code?
Sure. The employer may terminate this agreement for cause upon proof of improper or unethical misconduct, conviction of a crime, any act of moral turpitude, dishonesty, fraud, any infraction as defined in Title 49-5-501, Sections 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the Tennessee Code annotated as enacted or hereafter amended, material breach of this contract, failure to follow Sumner County Board of Education policies or handbook, violation of local, state, or federal law, or for any reason established by state law.
Ms. Hayes.
Mr. King, if you just put the code in. Yeah, did you read the TCA 49-501? Could we just put, if that's law, can we just put that?
Right, that's what I'm wanting. Well, I took out, there's 4 infractions that it lists under that code. And so I just took those out, and now I'm just stating the code. So prior.
So can we just list the code if it's just the pure code?
Yeah.
Instead of all the words?
Well, I already did that. I already took out the words. So the words I had listed originally was incompetence, insubordination, and neglect of duty.
Which are not in the code.
Those are in the code. Right.
So you took things out of the Tennessee Code law.
So instead of stating those are just, I list the code, right? They're in that code, and they're defined in 49-5-501. So just to make it less wordy, I guess.
That you added to the code. It's the pure code. Can we just list TCA 49-501 section da-da-da?
Right, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm adding.
Is there a reason why that would not fit in this, Mr. Presnell?
No, there's no reason. Following your list, Mr. King, the first, certainly conviction, act of moral turpitude, dishonesty, fraud, is set forth in the code section you cited.
It's set forth where? I'm sorry?
In the code section you cited under 501 subsection 3.
Oh, okay.
Because it includes immorality, conviction of a felony or crime involving moral turpitude, dishonesty, disregard of teacher code of ethics, because this is a teacher infraction list in this section. And then that's subsection 3. Subsection 5 you referenced is incompetence, and it gives a definition of that.
Right.
Subsection 6 is inefficiency, which is defined as being below the standards of efficiency maintained by others currently employed by the board for similar work, or habitually tardy, inaccurate, or wanting in effective performance of duties.
So this code, Mr. Presnell, was set for teachers? for all education employees?
Let me get to the beginning of it. Yeah, this is under subchapter 5, which pertains to teachers, personnel. I understand he's using the definitions of those sections.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead of stating the definitions, I scratch those and I just list the code, is all I've done there. But you mentioned fraud. I may have missed that. So in that code 49-5-501, you said that there was fraud in there?
No, I do not see the word fraud. What it says is conduct unbecoming to a member of the teaching profession may consist of, but not limited to, one or more of the following, and it gives 5 non-exclusive factors or elements. Immorality, 1. 2, conviction of a felony or a crime involving moral turpitude. C, dishonesty, unreliability, continued willful failure or refusal to pay one's just and honest debts. 4, disregard of the teacher code of ethics in such a manner as to make one obnoxious as a member of the profession. Or number 5, improper use of narcotics or intoxicants. That is subsection 3.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So the director of schools, he would be the oversight over the teacher in making those decisions, right?
Yes.
This code is for teachers.
Yes.
Does it make sense to you legally that this be placed in paragraph 8? Or does it already read all of those?
Ms. Hayes, I'll answer it this way. In trying to set up this concept of having a section of egregious conduct that would result in a for-cause termination, therefore no severance, talking about that, the way the original contract is written is to have these broad terms that include specifically a criminal conviction, but then acts involving moral turpitude, fraudulent acts, intentional unethical business conduct. So those are broad terms that I think intentionally so, because we never know what the conduct is going to be. So it's difficult to set out a list of what would be unethical business conduct, for example. This code that Mr. King references is under Part 5 teacher tenure, and it gives those definitions as he and I have read.
Well, and I'm unaware of any other section of definitions for educational professionals in our code. And so that's why I think it applies. And again, this was also from another contract that where it outlined all of that. So
Okay, Mr. Hawkins?
Your amended amendment, does it have any language described that's not in the code or in the law?
Dishonesty and fraud. Failure to follow Sumner County Board of Education policies or handbook. And then also violation of local, state, or federal law, or for any reason established by state law. So the whole thing again, okay. I'm also gonna, given that what's in here, it points out immorality, okay, under section 3. I'm also going to get rid of improper. So it says, so here it is. Here's my final, or what I have right now. The employer may terminate this agreement for cause upon proof of unethical misconduct, conviction of a crime, any act of moral turpitude, dishonesty, fraud, any infraction as defined in Title 49-5-501, Section 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the Tennessee Code annotated as enacted or hereafter amended, material breach of this contract, failure to follow Sumner County Board of Education policies or handbook, violation of local, state, or federal law, or for any reason established by state law. What's that? So I guess that would have to be added in our, since we voted. Right, so during period of employment.
Through Mr. King.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. King. Ms. Hayes?
Since this code was under the teacher's license and Dr. Langford has one, can we just add at the loss of a teacher, an action that the loss of a teacher's license would be for cause?
Yeah, well, losing the license means ineligible to be the director. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that simple.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, I've just got a question. Based on the amendment, I think the first item mentioned now, I think you removed improper, but it is unethical misconduct. Is that defined within 49-5-501? And if not, what's the intended definition of that?
Just a moment, Mr. Davis.
Well, we do have a code of ethics. We do have a code of ethics and board policy, so. And state law also gives definitions of unethical ethics violations.
I don't think we're referencing that. It's just the verbiage unethical misconduct. I think that could be open to your interpretation.
Is there, I thought I answered that, but I'm just wondering, are we waiting on? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that phrase unethical business conduct is not defined in 49, Chapter 5.
I feel like I agree with Ms. Hayes that the easiest thing to do to cover all the bases it will cover everything in the statute is to just add language that says in the event of loss of a teaching license, or or an act that results in the loss of a teaching license, because all of the things that are listed that can make you lose a teaching license are all of those things. And so I feel like it's a lot clearer and a lot easier for all parties involved to just have the simple language of or an event. So I won't be supporting Mr. King's, but I would support an amendment that would have that language in there, which I feel like would be cleaner and simpler and would still give us the same coverage.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews.
I will make that motion. I will make a motion that we amend Mr. King's amendment to strike his language, keep current language, but add, let me see where I want to add it. After fraud, an event, no, an act which results in the loss of teaching license, and then or intentional unethical business conduct. It falls under that statute. I feel like I don't think that we have to list that particular statute on there. I feel like there could be other reasons why too. I would assume that you could, lose your teaching license. So I think just an act that results in the loss of a teaching license would be my amendment. Do I need to read that again?
Yeah, let me just make sure I understand what your motion is. Can you restate what you're trying to do, please?
Right. So my motion would be to strike Mr. King's words, but to add after fraud an act which results in the loss of a teaching license.
And so you mean after fraud in the original document?
Yes.
Okay. An act which results in the loss of a teaching license.
Motion been made in second. Discussion on the amendment.
I'll say.
Sorry, Mr. Second. We're in discussion now, Mr. Lacy. Seeing no lights. Mr. King's first.
Just trying to figure out what all would cause a loss of teaching license, because not renewing your teaching license, I guess, would. But like you said, that would forfeit the agreement. I'm sorry.
Mr. Johnson, if you would, read that amendment, please.
Yes, sir. The motion is to strike Mr. King's amendment and add language to the original contract that says an act which results in the loss of a teaching license.
Motion been made in second, Mr. King.
So I have another question. So in the original, it does say intentional unethical business conduct. So I'm thinking back to what Mr. Daniels had said. Do we want to strike that because the vagueness that he was recommending, that he was suggesting? So what would define unethical?
Could I make a suggestion that we just vote on Mr. King's amendment, and then depending on what happens with that, we move on to Ms. Andrews instead of, I think what we're doing right now is we're trying to rewrite amendment with another amendment, and it's just causing a lot of confusion. It might be easier to vote on Mr. King's amendment, and then based on the results of that, if Ms. Andrews has a motion or another amendment, that we discuss that at that time.
Ms. James. Yeah, we currently have an amendment with a second on the floor unless she wants to withdraw it. She does not. Okay. Mr. Lancaster.
You said which would result.
The loss of a teaching license.
Which would result. Just trying to think how this plays out. Just would. How do you? I think what you're trying to do is simplify it. Instead of would, could to me, but because would means you got to go through whatever the process of. That's what I don't know.
Could leaves it open. If it could lead to it, somebody just makes an accusation that could lead to loss of your teaching license. If you use the word could, then with the accusation, it's automatically done. With would, they would have to go through the process and it be held up.
Okay. Again, words
matter.
Words matter. I'm trying to make sure I'm.
Would a suspension of a teaching license also be the same as the loss in the eyes of this, this verbiage? Because it's a loss for a period of time.
Feel like if they're gonna, if the teaching license would be suspended, then there would have to be one of these reasons within that for them to suspend it. So I think it's,
Would you be willing to agree that language to say the loss or suspension of the teaching license?
with, Mr. Presnell, do you have a opinion on that, on loss versus suspension?
My only comment there is suspension, by definition, is capable of being rectified and reinstated. So a loss seems irrevocable.
Yeah, I think I would like to stick with loss just because of knowing what the process has to be in order to go into a contract. Because if you say suspension and then it's done and then it's found it's reinstated, then that ends up being more of a headache, I think, long-term for the board, and can then result in more, it actually could end up being more financially detrimental to the board than to wait until it's actually lost.
Ms. Hawkins?
I think you get into a gray area when you say could or would. I think probably it's more, pardon? That results in loss of a teaching certificate. Because, I mean, it could, but it didn't. It would, but it didn't. I think you get into some gray areas there. I think it should be, if the teaching license is lost, that's the line that's crossed.
Mr. Graham?
Back on the suspension, is there anything in the statute or in the law that prescribes a suspension as disciplinary action for a teacher's license? I know that it can be rectified. I think when we talk about it being rectified, that's if new information has come to light to say that, you know, a teacher or whoever had the teacher's license did not violate the law. But is there any code that says that if you violate a certain part of the law, you know, you have a 30-day suspension as, you know, as a penalty?
I'm not aware.
All right, we're on the amended motion. Mr. Johnson, would you want to read that motion?
One final question, just because, hey, I got a 50-cent law degree at best. What your motion says is just specifically defining for cause, correct? Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
I mean, it has no bearing on anything else. It's just, this is what we're saying, this would be for cause.
Correct.
And fine, okay.
And if I may comment here, I want to ensure we're talking about the types of conduct that would be a for-cause termination that would result in no severance. Okay. Because, yes, I want to ensure, because the code does allow the board to dismiss a director for violating some of those, some of that conduct in Chapter 5, Section 501. That doesn't necessarily mean it rises to the level of a no severance trigger. That's this board's decision.
Mr. Johnson?
All right, everybody, we're voting on Ms. Andrews' amendment to strike Mr. King's amendment and add language that says an act which would result in the loss of a teaching license. And with that, Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
Which
results in,
which, yes, which results. Okay, an act which results in the loss of a teaching license. All right, Ms. Hayes, Mr. Lancaster.
Quick question. Can we read out exactly what this would say with Ms. Andrews' amendment so I can totally understand? Because I think we had Mr. King and then we had Ms. Andrews basically struck most everything and inserted some additional language. So I'm just making sure I understand exactly how these first couple of sentences read, please.
You want me to read it?
Yes, Ms. Andrews, please.
The employer may terminate this agreement for cause, which is defined as an act that results in a criminal conviction or one involving moral turpitude, fraud, an act which results in the loss of a teaching license, or intentional unethical business conduct by employee during employee's employment.
Ms. Andrews, everybody understand now?
Mr. Lancaster.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. King?
No.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
No.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacy?
Yes.
Chairman Brewer?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-2.
All right, we're back to the main motion now. We will have to amend the motion. If you would like to do so, your motion, Mr. Daniels, was to accept the contract as written. You would have to amend your motion to accept the contract as amended, if you choose to do so.
It would be as amended, yes. So.
Okay.
Yes, I make a motion to
You amend your motion.
amend.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Hold up just a second. So
You can just amend it.
we just amended the contract. So the motion would be to accept the employment agreement as amended.
Yes.
It's not done until Mr. Langford agrees to it as well. Okay.
Yes, I
So,
understand
and
that.
Whoever made your second, Mr. Wise, are you okay with that second? Okay, we've got the second on there. All right, we ready to vote? Mr. Johnson?
Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster? He's abstaining. Okay, I couldn't hear him. Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. King?
No.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Mr. Wise?
Yes.
Ms. Graham?
No.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacy?
No.
Chairman Brewer? Motion carries 7-3 with one abstention.
Discussion or action,
Second.
So can we wait just a second? 'Cause there's something going on with the mic.
Oh, is there something happening with the
Yeah,
mics?
sorry.
I'm sorry. Let's take a 5-minute recess. We'll take a 5-minute recess. Come back in 5 minutes. All right, let's bring the meeting back to order. I think we left off on discussion and interaction regarding the minutes of the April 4th special call meeting. Is there a motion? Motion to approve. Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Mr. Wise. I've heard that, but I didn't see who did it. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is, did we not? Okay, well, let's go back and get the March minutes. Discussion and interaction regarding minutes of the March 21st regular meeting. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Now we're at recognition of hearing and delegations. Ms. Hayes.
Mr. Mike Brown, the man needs a pay raise for sitting. A recognition among your many awards. Well, Sumner County School Board, I have, and the guests that are here tonight, I have the honor of recognizing Mr. Mike Brown, my friend, and his wife Christy is here with him, a teacher at HHS. There she is. Come on up here, Christy. Yeah, y'all make a great team. We've got great educators in this county. Mike Brown is an accomplished education professional with a passion for athletics, teaching, and leadership. With more than 40 years of experience in the field of education, Mr. Brown has made a significant impact in various roles, including as an athletic director, teacher, and principal. Mr. Brown's journey in the field of education began with his love for sports. His passion for athletics led him to pursue a bachelor's degree in physical education, followed by a master's degree in administration. After graduating from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, Mr. Brown was hired at Hawkins Middle School in 1981, teaching 5 prep classes and coaching multiple sports, including football, girls and boys basketball, and track. He later moved to Hendersonville High School, where he taught for 12 years and coached a variety of sports, including volleyball, girls and boys, track, and basketball. After 20 years of teaching, Mr. Brown moved into administration as an assistant principal at HHS before taking the principal position at Knox Doss Middle School and then on to Station Camp Middle School. You have quite the career. Mr. Brown's teaching and administration success earned him the opportunity to take on additional responsibilities as an athletic director for Sumner County Schools, and we are so grateful. He oversees the school's sports programs and managing the budget, scheduling, and staff supervision. As an athletic director, Mr. Brown demonstrated exceptional leadership skills and was named School System Administrator of the Year by the TSSAA, the Tennessee Secondary School Athletic Association, in the fall last year of 2022. Mr. Brown was recently named the Tennessee Athletic Director of the Year by the we have a lot of acronyms in education, don't we? The TIAAA, the Tennessee Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. In total, Mr. Brown has been serving our Sumner County schools for 43 years. That is impressive. He has been a role model and a mentor to countless students, athletes, and colleagues. Off the field, Coach Brown enjoys, and I tell you, Coach, the title of coach, well done. He enjoys spending time with his family, his wife, Christy Brown. She is Christy West Brown, an HHS teacher, and they have 2 sons, and most importantly, 1 granddaughter, which is the love of their life. Mike, we appreciate you.
Thank you.
The Sumner County School Board, all those that you have mentored and invested in.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Hey, Christy, come on up here. Jeremy, who wants to get a picture?
All right, next item on the, we're still on the same item, hearing of delegations. When I call your name, come on down and state your name and address for the record. Please direct all your comments toward the chair. Don't call anybody out by name. You'll have 5 minutes to discuss an agenda item. First one is Hillary Lounder.
Hillary Lounder, 1401 Shoreside Drive in Hendersonville. I just have a couple comments on the policy and procedure. I appreciate you guys, all the work you've put into it. I know that it's been a lot of waiting for the state and kind of kicking the can down the road until you had, a structure to work with. After talking with some people, a concern I have would be individual school board members being able to challenge books that are at schools that are not in their district. So I'd like to see on that challenge form, if someone wants to check school board, that it mean the school board as a united body is perhaps challenging that book, thinking that it might not be appropriate for our district. I think there's a problem if individual people are just kind of picking and choosing books from throughout the entire county. I'm not sure where this has landed totally, but I would like to see it that only a student or a staff member at the school or a parent or guardian who has a child at the school be allowed to make the challenges. I just think that helps kind of streamline things. And one last thing, as far as reading the challenge materials or listening to them or watching them, whatever the case may be, because I know it's kind of a multimedia situation, you're probably going to end up with a lot of reading. And I would hope that if a school board member felt like they didn't have the time or the desire to read the challenge material, that they abstain from voting on it. I really don't see how you can really vote on a book that you've not thoroughly read. You can read synopsis, you can go to different websites, but unless you're reading it in the full context, I don't really see how you could make an informed decision. So those are just some thoughts I had on the policy and procedure for the book challenges. Thank you, and again, thank you for your time working on this.
Thank you, Ms. Lounder. Megan Brennig.
Good evening. Thank you guys for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am also going to speak on the book policy, but before I do that, I want to just thank you for your efforts tonight. I know that was a long moment and we appreciate it. We're excited. In the policy as written, step number 7 says that the review committee is to review a full text within 14 days. Are they expected to read the text in full and have the review completed within 14 days? I think that's reasonable for something like A Place Inside of Me, but on a meteor text, like if for some reason someone challenged War and Peace, that's probably completely unrealistic.
Miss let me interrupt you. You give your name and address for the.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Megan Brennig, 171 Winbook Chase, Hendersonville, Tennessee.
Now continue.
You don't know me now? I would also like to point out that depending on the grade level, that some of the books are going to be more challenging to get through in 14 days, especially to get through and then also review. Along the lines of that, not to say that you need to take so much longer, as we are seeing more bills coming through the House, even as recently as last night, that are going to restrict how much time you have for book challenges. So I also would like to see if we can limit the number of book challenges that can come through by any one person at any one time. If we know that it's likely we'll have a limited amount of time to make it through book challenges, and a parent brings 100 books to their principal at one time, that is immediately going to eliminate the majority of those books without a proper review cycle. A few other guidelines that I thought would be helpful is that there should be a maximum number of challenges per year by one person. So if you talk about that, that would help also eliminate the pressure on a timed review period. Complaints and appeals should be posted publicly for parent review. Names can be redacted, but parents should be made aware of any pending challenges in their school in particular, so that we can come and share our thoughts on those with you guys. Further, any committee findings should be made public if the book is kept, or if the book is removed, and the appeal process should be applied to both situations. So if a school book is taken out of my child's school and the review committee brings it out, I should be able to appeal and say that I would like to keep it in. Minimum requirements should be established for appeal and consistency across the schools. So in order to appeal a review committee decision, there should be a minimum number of parents or staff, people who are eligible for review, to be able to bring that appeal further. All reviews, all complainants should have to affirm that they have actually read the full text. Right now in the form, it just says, have you read the text, yes or no? I do not think you should be able to bring forth a complaint without having actually read the text. And additionally, it should have to be the full work in question, because sometimes context is really critical. I think we can all know that the Bible has some pretty interesting things in it, and if you have context, it means a much different thing than if you read them out of context. And then I also just want to ask that you allow students to have a say in the materials that are at their schools. I believe that they should be members of the review committee, obviously with parental permission if they are under 18. But I don't think that just applies to high school. I have been reading some of the books that have been challenged, like Ways to Make Sunshine, before my child, and then I give it to my child to get her opinion on it after my parental permission was given. Thank you guys for the consideration. I appreciate your hard work on this, and I appreciate your continuing work on it.
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. Charlene Allmiller. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Dr. Charlene Allmiller at 143 Roland Circle, Hendersonville, Tennessee 37075. I'm here to speak about the book challenge policy as well. One thing that I would like to say is that it might be a good idea to have in the beginning of the year forms, just letting parents know and that they have to sign, that they understand that where to go look to link into the library so they can go ahead and look at things. And then if they sign that, they're saying they're okay with everything that's in there. They can always withdraw that at any time. But then you can't come in 6 months later and then like try to criminalize the librarians, because parents have to have some kind of responsibility to go out there and check their child's, like what's available to their children as well. I am very, very concerned about the lack of appeal of working as a librarian or as a teacher in this environment. I have gone to the schools to scan the books in 2 days, and I'm going back tomorrow, and the look on the teachers' faces is they feel betrayed, and so now would be a really, really good time to tell them how much you appreciate them. And when we couldn't find the ISBN numbers to scan them in, we were saying, these are ones that we couldn't scan in. Teachers actually asked us, are these the ones that we can't have in our rooms then? And that's really sad. Like, we are questioning whether they can carry a gun to school and have that. We are giving them our lives, the lives of our children, but we're saying we don't trust their judgment on what books they need in their classroom to educate our kids. There is something, a disconnect, wrong with that. So and I have, as somebody who has been scanning these books, I am questioning like the frequency and like how we're doing change management of the books that are in the classrooms, because there are thousands of books sometimes in just one grade level. And I've heard people saying that these will need to be counted every quarter, and that is just not feasible. That is not a long-term plan. If it's taken me 2 days to do a couple of grades at one school, and we have 50 schools, it's just not feasible. We need to look at this as an efficient, effective planning mechanism. So I highly recommend that we have this is our baseline like inventory, and then a change management process, and train the teachers on the process. We all want to make sure that everybody has visibility into what their kids are learning. I mean, I'm very active in what my kids are learning. Probably they would say like my kids would not want it to be that active, but I would say let's make this process not all against the teachers, because that is what they are feeling. And parents are welcome to not sign the form, but all they have to do is they sign the form that they know where they can go find access to these materials, and that they are aware of what their kid has access to in the classroom. So we can like try to get this set up. Now, having said that, the 14 days, I know that this might be coming from the state, but I would wonder if the guidelines, 14 days for review, or take it off the shelf until it can be reviewed if there's an influx of books. That may be a question that we need to ask the textbook commission. And then, I mean, we just need to think about this process as a long-term solution. And right now, I don't see parents going in every quarter being able. It's going to take us at least a few weeks to a month to do it. So this would be a constant process. Thank you for your time, and thanks for everything that you guys do.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Tyler Creasy. State your name and address for the record, please.
Tyler Creasy, 397 Henry Harris Road, Westmoreland. I'm just going to address a few points of the reconsideration of materials policy tonight. I would like to ask that the policy be worded to limit the persons allowed to make challenges to current parents or guardians, students, and employees. I do not believe board members should be allowed to make book challenges unless doing so as a parent of a student at a specific school in which a book is in circulation. Challenges to materials, I believe, should come only from those who are stakeholders with a vested interest in a specific school. I believe guidance for this has already been established by our state, at least on a couple of different occasions. Once, March 2022, when the House adopted and passed House Bill 1944. Amendment 1 of that bill adds that each LEA should adopt a policy providing a way for parents or legal guardians to report obscene materials that are being made available to students through the parents or legal guardians' students' school's library. And then more recently, of course, in the guidance drafted by the State Textbook Commission, of which the very well-respected Dr. Linda Cash is chair, where it speaks of the LEA's adopting policy to receive feedback on that material. It states, and I have that draft here, it states that the district should provide a form for employees, students, or parents/guardians to submit to the district. And then again, in that same draft, when it speaks of appealing a board's decision to the state level, it goes on to say an employee, student, or parent/guardian. may appeal a determination that materials in the student's or employee's school's library are inappropriate. And several times in this draft, it uses that phrase, employee, student, or parent/guardian. In neither of these examples of guidance at the state level is a board member included as someone from whom a challenge should or would be expected. Nor do I see board members listed in the reconsideration policies of some of our other mid-state counties. I have Rutherford County's reconsideration policy here, and it says a complaint can be filed by a parent/guardian, employee, or student. Williamson County's reconsideration policy says a complaint may only be made by a current Williamson County Schools parent/guardian, employee, or student. To me, in my opinion, a board member bringing a challenge on which he or she would later be able to cast a vote deciding the fate of a book is akin to a judge filing a lawsuit and then presiding on a bench trial on that very suit. So I would ask that board members not in the capacity of a board member be able to make a challenge to a book. Regarding the school live review committees, I would like to see the students, at least at the middle and high school levels, be invited to serve on those committees, provided they've already read the book or have a parent permission to do so. I feel it's vital to hear from our students as much as possible, as they are the ones most affected by this policy. And then lastly, I also strongly believe that in order for a board member to ever cast a vote to remove a book from our library circulation, he or she should have read the book in its entirety. And I would like to see this stipulated somewhere in policy. And as always, I thank you for your willingness to serve and for you allowing me to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Creasy. Tracy Parker. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Parker. I live at 1110 Woodvale Drive in Gallatin. I feel a little bit like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I looked, I'm one of the librarians in the county. I've been, this is my 25th year as the middle school librarian at what was Knox Dawes, is now Station Camp. And there was a couple of things I just wanted to point out to you guys that when we met as a district committee last week that we kind of looked at and wanted to make sure you kind of got a perspective on old versus new. So if you look first on the agenda, it refers to this as instructional materials policy, but our new policy will be just library materials. Those are very different things, instructional materials and library materials. Library materials are optional. There's no requirement for a child to check out any particular item that I might have. Just as several other folks have pointed out, when you look down on the color-coded version that Mr. Johnson made for us, that first green section, that's per state law now. We have to have that current list, and all schools have for many years had their card catalogs, as us old people say, our OPACs, available for parents to use. I don't think it's altogether a bad idea to make sure that parents are aware of how to access that. If they're not, I don't think that's a bad idea. As much as we can make them aware of anything, as y'all know, with various communications. If you look at the other things listed under the policy, I would also reiterate what they said about a board member. There's no precedent for that. As been mentioned several times, the board's power lies in its power as a body, as one unit, and unless I was as a board member, you were a parent at that school, I think that's a little conflict of interest. As Ms. Creasy said, you're a judge and you're also arresting the person or bringing the lawsuit. That seems a little out of place. Another thing that the librarians discussed a fair bit at our meeting on Thursday again was number 5. Where it says keep challenged materials available for use during the reconsideration process. That is standard from the state recommendations from Dr. Cash's committee. It's true in all of our surrounding counties, and I really have never seen a reconsideration policy that didn't read that way. And one of the concerns from the librarian's perspective that we have is that those books are oftentimes at the different schools collected and brought to the board for the board members to read. Well, now it's in violation of the policy because it's not there still on the shelf while it's being reconsidered. So I don't know if it needs to be a line item in your budget that you have a few $100s to be able to purchase books for board members, or you go to the public library and borrow your copy or whatever. But I do think that that needs to be addressed, because we're kind of circumventing the policy when we use those otherwise. There was quite a bit of discussion about number 7 and that 14 days and what the interpretation of that was from the textbook commission. We kind of felt like the 14 days, you could interpret it to mean that's how long the principal has to get their committee together, to get everybody a book, to get everybody on the same page. But I would encourage a deadline for when that committee should report. There should be something like that. And I agree with some of the earlier comments. When you're talking high school, middle school books, some of those books are much larger. And so 45 days, no less than 30, I would think you would want to have. Number 8, letter A, again, read, review, or listen to the contested material in its entirety. I think everyone involved in the process of reviewing a book or any other material needs to have seen or heard it all. And I would say, as a librarian, and what I tell the kids all the time, you can't just watch the movie version of the book and know what the book said, because sometimes it is not at all the same. So I would just want to reiterate that again, the context and having an idea of how all of that goes down. Number 10 addresses the fact that if a book does come before the board and the board renders a decision, whether that decision is, this is a book that we just feel should be at the high school level, or this is a book that we feel, but just that it does apply to all the schools. That's only fair. Y'all deal with the district as a whole, and even if it wasn't challenged in another school, if you've made that decision that you think it's only best at a certain level, then that should apply district-wise. That's logical. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Joanna Daniels. Ms. Daniels, state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay. Joanna Daniels, Hendersonville, Tennessee. Okay, so I want to start talking about, of course, the textbook. You know, I'm a taxpayer and I don't have children in school, but that doesn't mean that my money isn't being used for the whole district. To take away our voice as a taxpayer but still use our money, I believe is incorrect. You know, also, to say a school member can't talk or can only be to that district. Well, y'all make policies for the whole county, not just for your own districts. So, in my opinion, the school board member should be able to bring up a challenge to a book, no matter where it's at, because they write the policy and help write the policy for the whole county, not just for their own district. So, you know, this is only one other way to stop us as taxpayers from talking. You know, you guys have dismissed our surveys for the director search, and you've dismissed other things that we've tried to say. And so taking us as a taxpayer and saying only, you know, parents or students can say, well, I'm a stakeholder. I'm a stakeholder here in the county. I should be able to say, no, I don't want that book, or I don't want my money paying for that. Or why don't you just take my money and give my money back to me, and then you guys can go on without my property taxes. I think that would be good. So I encourage you to definitely either put a taxpayer in there, that any taxpayer can bring up a challenge, or definitely put in any school board member, because that is the only fair thing to do. 2, I want to talk about a few budget things. 1, ESSER. You know, there's some ESSER things in here. Payroll, teachers, social workers, $49,000. Once again, social workers, you know, being funded by ESSER. Teacher salaries, $39,000. ESSER is supposed to be paying for stuff that isn't, you know,
recurring. So I'd like to know where is that money going for teacher salaries, and which teacher salaries, because this money is leaving in 2024. So what are we using this money for? And that $397,000 in teacher salaries, is that going to go past 2024? Lastly, these STREAM mini camps, the science, technology, reading, engineering, arts, and math. It looks like you guys are wanting the county commission to approve a whole lot of money. It looks almost close to $3 million, maybe $2.5 million. So I don't know if you've looked into these STREAM mini camps, but I guess we're going on the third year for this, and the third summer. And I just want you to know that, in 2022, grade 4 mathematics, we are at we rank at 236. In 2019, we were 239. In 2017, we were 236. So, we regressed a little bit, but not a whole lot. But I would say in 2 years of this, these STREAM, summer camps, we haven't gone up much. And, these are put on by SCORE and Battelle. And I just want I want to read something to you from SCORE, because, they help with the STEM, which is what this is. And it says it's to fill the pipeline of STEM-related career needs to advance economically the state of Tennessee. So we're basically trying to fill a pipeline of people to put into a career. So don't you think that maybe why our kids aren't progressing in Tennessee might be because it's all about training them for the workforce instead of teaching them to think, not how to think. So to me, it looks like what STREAM is doing, which is STEM, which is SCORE, is really focusing more on, hey, you know what, let's get them career ready, which, by the way, in the state of Tennessee, I don't know if you know this because SCORE has said it, that kids don't want to go to college. Maybe they're not going to college because they're not really interested in learning, because they really feel like they're just being trained for a pipeline, for a workforce to keep Tennessee economically advanced. So I just encourage you guys to really take a look at that, and I'll definitely be sending information to the Education Committee for this, and I would encourage you to not approve this budget because it hasn't helped for the last 2 years. So I don't know how one more year it's going to help. And really, honestly, SCORE hasn't done much of anything for Tennessee. Okay, I have a timer on. I still have a few seconds.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels. Next item on the agenda, we don't have executive session, I don't guess. Report from the director.
No, I'm just going to comment about some stuff on the business.
Okay. Okay.
Ms. Skinner, Ben.
It sounds like it. Yeah, it looks like it's going to do a presentation. So.
We're gonna be fast, but as you know, as Frankie and Ben, Bruce are coming up, we want to talk a little bit about what's going on. We've got a Facebook Live for third grade retention tomorrow night to try to, Ms. Hessen made a video last week that went out to explain. We had Thursday, 9-10 days ago, we had quite a bit of information that dropped finally from the state about summer programming, everything like that. Fast and furious. Miss Brown, our finance team, our allocation for summer learning camps dropped by about $1.568 million to add more grades, and she and her team made it work with Miss Karen Craighead, and so we're very appreciative to the work that they did, because in a time span of about 36 hours, we got everything turned around. We got it into E-Plan and got approval of our waiver today. The number of days and the number of hours and everything. So I'm going to let them talk a little bit about that. So third grade retention, to Facebook Live tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And then summer learning camps. I wanted to give you an update on those. I will say that summer learning camps are led by Sumner County teachers. using materials that we produce locally. Frankie and Ben can talk about that in just a second. But we don't have an affiliation with SCORE on summer learning. SCORE has absolutely nothing to do with our summer programming. And they can feel free to, but I can say Mr. Bruce is largely responsible for our STEM programming in Sumner County, and we're number 1 in the state in STEM programming right now. He works with Mr. Moore, and we're number 1 in career technology education pathways in the state. And of course, when we're talking pathways, we're not talking about a pipeline that puts people on different types of job sites. We're talking about a pipeline that opens up the future for our students, and that goes all the way from entry-level positions for teenagers and college career age students, all the way through PhDs, terminal degrees, whatever that might be. What we are really working hard to do is to try to find ways to get kids connected into what they want to do in the future, whether that's military, whether that's lineman school, whether that's career technical education. There are 100 different ways that kids can go. And that's what we're excited about. In fact, we're not presenting about this tonight, but we can certainly talk about it a little bit. Our special interest camp signups rolled this week, and if you look, those camps, with ACT prep all the way through to criminal justice, the Anatomage tables that we purchased with ESSER funds last year, we actually have a class, I think, at Beach High School, and it's doing dissections on the Anatomage tables for kids to pick up anatomy and physiology experience this summer. So we're real excited about the work that our teams have done. I'm going to turn it over real quickly to Frankie and let her share with you about Summer Scholars, and then Ben's going to share about our STEM activities.
Hello. This is just a nuts and bolts presentation to give you an update on where we are in Summer Scholars, look at some locations, and then look at numbers of students that we're going to be serving. The program will start June 5th and run through the 29th. The reason why we're starting a week into June is so that our Union Elementary School kids can participate in the camp, as well as those teachers can serve if they choose to do so. We have 12 locations this year. 12 locations this year. Last year we had 18, so our goal this year with scaling that down to 12 was to help with personnel when we think about cafeteria staff, nurses, janitors, all the things that are needed to run summer programming. We can fill the schools up with more students and reduce the number of employees that we need across the district. So that's why we went down to 12. You can see the locations there for elementary, the number of students that are enrolled, and then the number of teachers and staff that are required to run that facility. That does include office workers, it includes everyone. And those are the middle school sites. So 2 outliers, HB Williams, we're housing elementary and middle school there because their middle school numbers are small. So we put them in one building. And then Merrill Hyde Magnet School will be a K-8 location this year as well. We have extended the registration is actually closed for Summer Scholars, but we have an extended form for 3rd graders only. So it is open until May 12th for 3rd graders as we get data whether they need to attend or not attend. We will not turn away a 3rd grader, but it is closed for everyone else at this time. And then 8th graders will be part of the high school interest camps this year. In the past, they've been part of Summer Scholars, but we felt like the transition into high school, having the high school interest camp experience would give them some insight into the building that they're going to be in and make it more fun. So last year, we had 2,611 students signed up at this point. Right now, we have 2,890. On the 3rd grade form, there's about 83 kids right now. We're projecting that number will probably take up to about 150 after we get data in. And then the projected staff that we need to run the 12 sites is 274. This is what the day looks like during summer camp. So these are requirements from the state that we have to adhere to. So we have to have math and ELA 1 hour a day. We have to offer intervention 1 hour a day. So that looks like 30 minutes in math, 30 minutes in ELA, PE for 1 hour every single day, and then music, art, and STEM 1 hour a week. It's kind of like a related arts rotation during a regular school year. And this is the fun stuff, the STEM stuff that Ben's going to share with you about.
Well, I get the privilege of doing the fun stuff as a STEM coordinator, and the students, coming to a summer thing, they want to have something that will excite them and engage them. So I am a firm believer it's the race to the heart of the child, and the first one there wins. And we want to make sure that we not only grab their heart, but we grab their head. And one of the things that we are doing is using the previous year we did DC, and then the previous year before that we did Marvel. So now we're doing DC versus Marvel with STEM. And if you'll look at that sheet that you have there in front of you, it kind of lays out the things that we're doing. Ant-Man, it's a movie that just came out this past year. Aquaman, Iron Man, Superman, trying to use those things to bring STEM into the classroom with the students as they do it this summer. So there is week 1, it's all about soil. So you have Ant-Man, it's about soil. And you have week 2, Aquaman, it's all about water. Week 3 is Iron Man, so it's about bridge building, and also going to include wind involved in that, because if you know much about the Tacoma Bridge that collapsed, had to do with wind, so they're going to do those things. And then your week 4 is going to be Superman. Superman Solar is coming out soon. So just as an example, first of all, I have the privilege of working with some very creative people. And if you know anything about Working Genius that our staff has been through, mine is inventive and creative. And we want students to use the 4 C's in STEM education and project-based learning. Excuse me. Creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. We want them to use those things to be prepared for the workforce. So we use things like that to get them to be creative and to think critically. So working with Kimberly Gann, she helped me put some of these ideas together. Actually, she was the first one to come up with the superhero theme a couple of years ago, and we've just been working collaboratively together. Sunday Mackerel, that works at Indian Lake Elementary, we've put a website together that we are using for not only this year's Summer Scholars Program, but will be able to be used in the future with the lessons already on there for teachers. So one of the things that we're doing all about ants is one of the things on day 1 with soil, and then they're going to investigate layers of the soil. They're going to do soil separation, and they're going to be looking at soil under a microscope. I have 30 microscopes in the STEM Lending Library we're going to be distributing out to schools to let students look at soil under a microscope. And then they're going to be looking at water. But this thing I have here is just one of the sites that they're going to be looking at, where they will fill out questions about their home. How do they use water? How often do they use the dishwasher, different things like that. And they'll have to kind of think about it and maybe go home and talk about it with their parents. But it's a website, and as they fill it out, this water starts to rise on this screen. And they're going to learn all about water and learn about water conservation. And then they're going to use the tips that are on the outside of it to come up with a conservation plan to be able to present to their peers, at their students and their teacher to let them learn more about it. They'll also be making a water wheel doing the water. They'll be looking at water under a microscope from a pond or a nearby creek to be able to look at the organisms in there and identify the organisms. So obviously the younger generation will be doing a little less of that, but as they get up into the middle school, 6th and 7th grade, they will be doing a lot more. It's just going to be scaffolded based on age. So I thank you for letting me share this, and look forward to seeing what our students are going to do this summer.
We'd be happy if you have any questions. I did want to add, Mr. King, you've asked a couple times about attendance for summer programming, and we have to put together, we received this information, as I said, about 9 or 10 days ago. We have to put together an attendance policy, but there are provisions in there for students to be able to make up a reasonable number of days. And so probably I'll be able to update you in a few weeks about exactly what that looks like. We've just got to kind of all, we've been trying to make sure we have the money lined up and the teachers lined up and the students lined up, and then we'll get we got a little bit of time on the attendance thing to communicate, but that's coming.
Mr. Lancaster.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Lane, and Frankie and everybody. That's a lot of good stuff. I didn't know we were talking about this tonight, I guess, but I had a few questions from people that had, I guess tried to register or had questions about registering for different programs. It's open for all students. What grades?
We're doing rising first graders all the way through high school. Summer Scholars, it's the funding stream is a little different. So for Summer Scholars, it's rising first graders through rising eighth graders.
But any student in the district, and it's free because it's.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've been able, it's one of the, mentioned Ms. Brown again, it's one of the things they've been able to do well is we are supposed to identify at-risk students and give them the highest priority, but we've been able to make it work where we can take all kids that register because it's been a really great thing for our families.
Do we have special programs for like our students with special support needs and things like that? Like
Yes, sir.
504s and IEPs and.
Yes, sir. We do the very best we can to meet all those student needs. So we have special ed resources, nursing. We try counseling. We try to hit everything that we can while students are there, just like the regular school year.
Do they have? I mean, are they doing the same exact program, or are these programs more catered toward them, or how? I mean.
Yeah, to the best of their ability, we have them do the exact same thing, just like they would in a regular, just a regular school year. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. King?
Yeah, just a question for clarity. Maybe I didn't hear this right, but I thought I heard that registration was closed for everyone but third graders?
Yeah, except for, we ran registration for 6 weeks.
Okay.
And then we've left it open for third grade parents, obviously with news of third grade retention and communication about that. We've got to leave that window open longer so that we want to be able to capture every third grader that's in need of summer programming.
Okay, I'm just asking. I had a parent reach out and ask me if they can get their child in, but I'll talk to you afterwards, I guess.
Yeah, and there's actually on the Facebook page, and we'll repost it tomorrow night after the Facebook Live. Okay. And then we'll send it through Remind and everything. Again, we're going to continue to just pound that as much as we can. But I've had several emails too from third grade parents wondering how they can register. But we'll keep resending that information. It's the same, it's the same way. It's just we've got it limited to where only third graders can register.
Ms. King, Ms. Andrews?
Yeah. On the Facebook Live, is there a plan to have another day? I know there's some concern with it obviously falling on a Wednesday night, which a lot of people go to church. I know some people, it'll be great for them because they'll be able to drop their children off into children programming and they can really have some undivided attention to do that. For some families, that's going to be really great, but I know other families who the whole family attends on Wednesday night. I know they don't want to miss out on those opportunities. So are there any additional planned Facebook Lives? Obviously, it's recorded. And so they can go back and watch, but so that they can participate.
Yeah, I think we can easily do another Facebook Live. They're fairly simple to put together, so yeah, we can absolutely do that.
Ms. Andrews, Mr. Lancaster.
Appreciate it because some people bought their wife tickets to a concert that just happened to be for Christmas.
You should absolutely do that.
Well, don't worry, I got to prioritize there. So.
Mr. Lancaster. All right, seeing no other light. Thank you. Dr. Langford.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate you. All right, where are we on the agenda?
New business.
New business. Item number 1, discussion and action regarding a revision to policy 4.403, reconsideration of instructional materials and textbooks upon first reading. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Yeah.
Approved by Mr. Lancaster. Need a second?
I don't know if he was.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. King. Mr. Lancaster, I think you had your light on first.
Yes. So I appreciate the people that spoke because I think we've addressed several of their concerns, and I kind of want to make sure I point these out for some folks. I know one librarian asked about keeping the challenge material during the reconsideration process. We added language that says unless all copies of the challenge library materials are being used for the review. So we did add some language there. The 14 days, the way I understood it and the way it reads is that's 14 days from once the challenge is made, that the principal gathers the people together to make the committee forms, not the committee's decision. Currently, we have that as basically open-ended within reason. We may have to go back and address that at a later time once law changes that, but that's the way that states right We do have in our policy that we just made the motion on that the board reviews and that our determination affects all grade levels for Sumner County schools, so that there's no mismatch between individual schools. I think the way it was written, it said established policy of the school, and we just changed that to be Sumner County schools. We do put a list of all challenged library materials and their current review status online. This list will be publicly posted on the district's website. And going back to, I think the main point of contention between some folks is the whole school board member, and I'll just state my point on that is, I mean, one reason that I feel like that is in there, we get people that ask us all the time to be their voice to take it to the next appropriate level or whatever, and that's still basically giving us that ability. That's not saying within our district, whatever. That's just part of our role. And obviously, if we answer to people, so if somebody thinks, well, Alan Lancaster challenged a book every month of his term in office, then I'm sure somebody will say he needs to go. Other than that, I mean, there's no perfect way to adhere this into a policy that is, based on a law that's ever changing, and hopefully finding a policy that the textbook commission also approves. But I think we did the best we could, and I think this hits as many points as possible. So.
Ms. Lancaster, Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, I too want to thank everyone that came and spoke tonight. I feel like this has been a long process, so thank you for enduring and staying with us and coming month after month. And I think we're all ready to get something in place and to move forward. I will say I do agree that I think it's ever-changing. I feel like, I think for us to get something in place to go forward at this point, and then as we continue to get more guidance from the textbook commission, it may be something that has to come back again for us to make those corrections. But that's not something that's different that we have to do with other policies when, the state makes different rulings from different laws and stuff. So I think we are all ready to get this policy behind us. With that said, I will say that I do disagree with our language on there about the school board members being able to challenge. One of the things when Dr. Cash turned in her late application, I made a phone call to her to ask about that, and while I had her on the phone, took the liberty to ask specifically about this policy, since she is the chair of the textbook adoption committee. Might as well kill two birds with one stone. And she informed me that the intent of this policy was not to have school board members challenge books. The intent of this policy is for parents, employees, those directly related to the schools, to have a say in what the children have access to. I know that we have a lot of grandparents that are heavily involved. My own children have great, I won't call them great grandparents because they're not great grandparents. They're grandparents who are great in their lives. I don't want to make anyone older than they are. However, as a parent, it is my responsibility as far as what my child is educated with. We love them dearly, and I've asked several friends and other moms and dads, and they agree. There are great people in their students' lives. However, ultimately, the Lord has given those students to us as parents for us to make those decisions. And so a grandparent does not have the right to overstep a parent's decision. And that is not, I know we've got members on this board who are grandparents, and that is not to be disrespectful at all. But if someone brings us a challenge, if someone says, hey, I don't like this book being in my kid's school, then our first response should be, you need to go and discuss that with the librarian or the principal. If someone who's a grandparent doesn't like a book that's in their grandchild's school, they should go have that conversation with their kid, with the parent of the student. And then if they collectively say, yeah, I see that, we both agree, then the parent should go and have that discussion. I'll say that. And then I also asked, she informed me, Dr. Cash informed me that the intent of the policy was that they can make a challenge at the school in which their child attends. So if my kids go to Beach High School, I can't make a challenge at Gallatin High School. My kids are not there. A parent at Gallatin High School would have to make that challenge. So, however, if a parent makes a challenge and then it comes to the board, and as a board we say that book is not appropriate for all of high school, then that becomes a district decision and it comes out of all. If it then goes to the state level and it's appealed to the State Textbook Commission and they make a ruling, then that ruling then goes for the entire state. So with that said, I would like to make a motion that we remove the notations in there where it does say school board member to stick with the intent of the policy.
So you've amended the motion? Or
And make a motion to amend the policy to remove where it says school board member.
okay, Mr. Johnson, have you got that? Okay. Need a second on it. Second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Oh, Mr. King, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so, these are public schools, and you have to understand that the public gets to say. I understand the frustration of a parent at a school, and someone, like a board member, challenges a book. But it's not a private school, okay? At a private school, the parent gets to decide on the materials because they're funding the school. They're paying for it. This is a public school. These are public schools, and the public is paying for it. Someone mentioned stakeholders earlier, thinking that the public, the taxpayer, is not a stakeholder. That's absolutely wrong. Stakeholders, here's the deal, without taxpayers, there would be no library. There would be no librarian. There would be no books. And what we're doing is we're taking their money and we're using it, and then we're telling them, you know what, you don't get to have a voice. That sounds like a private school. We had a lot of people against the charter school for that very reason, because they wouldn't, they operate autonomously. And that's what this is. If we limit it to just each school, we are basically, in a way, having those schools operate privately, not publicly. And I understand that a lot of people say they believe in public education, but that's only when it comes to funding. They don't believe it when it comes to the actual operation and the input of the public. Public schools means public voice. And they are more of a stakeholder than I would say a lot. They are one of the top stakeholders. They're funding the bill. Without them, we don't do any of this. And so to tell them no, you don't get a say is just an insult to the citizens and to the taxpayers. Now, we could make policy that those schools, that the parents and the employees of those schools are the only ones funding that school. Then the public wouldn't have a say. So we could do that. How about we do that? We go and just say, look, your kid goes to this elementary school, those parents and those employees fund that school, give everybody else a refund on their property taxes. If that's really what we're going to do, or we're going to say that the public gets no say, then they should not have any stake in funding that school. And so what we have here is actually a little bit of a compromise. Okay, instead of just coming out and saying, we're we're going to let every taxpayer and every citizen in Sumner County have the right to challenge a book. By the way, that's our current policy. Right now, our current policy is that anyone can bring a complaint. It doesn't say anything in our policy about at that school or whatever. Anyone can make a complaint. We've had this. Our policy has been in place since I think 1990 something. I'd have to go back and look. And in that time, there's been hardly any book challenges. You know, and as soon as we get a couple of book challenges, which means we're implementing the policy that's our current policy. As soon as that policy is actually used, we got to change it now. That doesn't make any sense. So up until now, we've allowed for anyone, any taxpayer, citizen, parent, to file a complaint about a book. To me, if we're going to increase restrictions on the public, there better be a really good reason. And right now, just a few book challenges that we've had this year is not enough reason for me. So we have here what I think is a good compromise. If we're not going to let taxpayers and citizens have a voice, we can at least let their elected representative speak on their behalf. And so they can come to the board member, a school board member, and they can say, hey, I want you to look at this book. And I think that is more than reasonable as a way to kind of do a little bit of compromise here instead of just coming all out and saying, hey, we're going to let every person in the county challenge books. They can go to their school board representative. I think that's perfectly reasonable. It's because they are stakeholders and we should not shut them out. I think if we shut them out, that's going to be, number one, it's going to be very unpopular. Anyway, I think we need to keep it as it is. That's I'll be voting no on that amendment.
Mr. King, Mr. Graham?
To build on what Mr. King said, I agree, with citizens being stakeholders and taxpayers being stakeholders, and that's not the language in here, but I do appreciate the compromise of it being a school board member. And I want to point out also that if it is a school board member, typically, if we have children in schools, we're kind of up to date on what the books in their library are. But if a citizen comes to us, we actually add a layer of insulation and discretion. We don't have to challenge a book that a citizen brings to us. We can apply some common sense as well. So I think this adds a layer of insulation to prevent excessive challenges as well.
Mr. Graham, Ms. Andrews?
Yeah. One of the reasons that we're doing this policy is because there has been a change to state law with the Age Appropriate Act, so that's why this is being brought in and having to be updated. Number two, I hear a lot of times hearing about stakeholders and taxpayers and how because of that, then they get a say as far as what happens in the minutia of our schools, regardless of whether or not they have a student there. However, in that same context, are you going to Sheriff Weatherford and talking to him and telling him which pistols they're supposed to have or which cars they're supposed to drive? Are you going to Toby Ellis and telling him what type of material we're laying down on the road? Are you telling EMA which sutures we're supposed to be using? Because you're stakeholders in that too, but you're also not experts there. So I understand that you may be taxpayers, but when it comes to what is directly affecting my children, ultimately parents are the ones that have the decision. And this is a parent's rights choice. And to try to overstep a parent by going through a board member is not the intent of the policy as it was adopted. And personally, I just don't think it's right. So,
Ms. Andrews. Mr. Johnson, would you read the motion? I'm sorry, Mr. Lacy.
I would think if you would remove board member, Dr. Phillips said a few months ago that it's just a given that a board member, the way he interprets it, can challenge a book. I would go as far as saying that you, specifically a board member cannot, if that's what you really believe, that a board member cannot challenge a book, because it depends on who's interpreting it. Dr. Phillips believes that they can.
as a sitting board member of yourself, that's what I'm saying is that you shouldn't. However, as I'm a parent, just because I'm a board member would not then override my rules. I could still, as a parent, go to my child's school if there's something I don't think is appropriate and say, as a parent, I'm coming and challenging this material. That's a right that I have as a parent to do that. So as a board member that has a parent, but just because I'm a board member doesn't mean that I can, again, my kids are beach kids, so it doesn't mean I get to go to Gallatin and go, hey, this isn't what your kids should be reading.
Mr. Gregory?
The state legislature helped us today by voting, and I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it would be illegal for any representative to sell books in the state of Tennessee schools with improper language and so forth. So I thought that was a big plus.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, I've just got a question on one of the forms. We've got the request for reconsideration of library materials. And one of the questions is, did you read or view the entire material? Yes or no? Is the intent of this request that the individual making the request for reconsideration, are they required to have read the entire book? Or can they just say, I mean, or is it just based on a quick review? Maybe they've gone to a website and, read a couple of sentences, or what's the intent?
So that is the TSBA sample form that we have doctored just to add board member, because that was the current version of the policy we were working with. And so, based on the policy you have in front of you, that box is informative. It's just to let you know, yes, I read the material, or no, I didn't read the material and challenged it. There's nothing in your policy that would require them to read the material before they initiate a challenge. There's nothing in the textbook commission guidance that says that either.
And I guess the reason I'm asking is if a citizen were to bring a request for reconsideration of library materials and they printed out a book report from a site they found somewhere online, taking material completely out of context, and as a board member, I'm not required to actually read that book to determine whether it meets, the standards of being removed from a library for a fourth grader, fifth grader, or high school student. I do think that makes it a little bit more challenging to make an honest recommendation to the board as to whether we think it should be removed or not. So, if a board member were to request that a book be removed, I think that they should have had to have read that entire material. And so that's, I would be more in favor of requiring that, as opposed to not allowing board members, review the material or bring a challenge. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Let me interject here. This meeting will adjourn in 5 minutes by policy, unless someone wants to make a motion to go to 10 o'clock.
Let's make a motion.
And we can't go past 10 o'clock by law, or by policy, I'm sorry. So, Mr. Lancaster.
I'd like to I know we got to get the summer school, or the summer school stuff for third graders in there. So let's go to 10. I make a motion to go to 10.
Motion made, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Oh, yes, I did have, I'm sorry, I'm getting back, I'm getting.
Ms. Andrews' amendment.
So I think the question was about the school board member and having a language in there that you have to have read it. I I'm fine. I'm not going to challenge a book. I'm not going to review a book unless I've read it all. But you know, I don't know how you would quote unquote enforce that. I mean, are we going to give a test? Are we going to make you have a?
Well, I mean,
I did a lot of quote unquote required reading in high school, and you know, I told them I read it. But
yeah. And I completely understand that, but there are websites that are specifically designed to make it easy to challenge books. And you know, yeah, if I print that out and I give it to my my school board member and they don't necessarily have to read it, I think that's not doing due diligence. But now we have to go through a process where that book has to be reviewed by a committee while it's pulled from the shelves, which may eventually not be removed, or you know, the reconsideration might not be accepted. So that's, you know, that's where, and I guess I would ask you know, our board attorney, you know, based on the state law, is there anything that says that we can't require the person making the complaint to have read the material?
No prohibition on that.
Thank you.
Like I said, I'm fully aware. I just don't know how you enforce it. And I've heard that the whole time through this, and I'm like, that's great. It makes complete sense. I agree, but unless we're going to be like, hey, if you don't make a 70 on this test, you can't. I just don't. I don't know how you enforce it. But that's my.
Ms. Lancaster. All right, Ms. Hawkins.
Is there anything in here, and I don't see it, that limits the number of books that can be challenged in a certain amount of time? I'm just thinking reasonably of what could happen, where someone comes in with a truckload of books and we're expected to process these. I'm just wondering if we need to have some sort of boundaries.
I don't have the answer to that. That could very well happen.
I can speak to that. So there is nothing in this policy about the limits to challenge. There is some language in the textbook commission guidance, the draft that we saw, about limits to challenges on appeal. So you can only make so many appeals to the textbook commission. There's nothing in the guidance about, or this policy about, limiting that. So, but there's also nothing, I guess, that prohibits that either. The guidance doesn't say anything either way.
Lancaster.
And going back to the appeal, hopefully, as this goes on, a lot of this will be out of our hands anyway. These books, you know, certain books are going to go to the state. They're going to make the determination, and then we're done. You know, because they overrule us. That's just the way the law is. So I understand everybody's worried that we're going to have, you know, 1 million challenges, and so far, I don't think we voted down a book. I mean, we had one that the committee voted down or didn't approve, but unless I'm missing one, I think this board passed them all, so or went with the recommendation of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. All right, Ms. Hawkins.
Well, I just was wanting to entertain the idea that we may want to discuss that. It's to putting language in the policy that does have some sort of limitations on how many books that we are expected to process, and also the review committee as well. There is the possibility that this could be abused to the point of not being reasonable.
Okay, this is first reading, of course, so we will see it again. Yes. Mr. President.
Just a quick comment, Ms. Hawkins, I'd want to study this a little more, but the textbook commission statute specifically says that the commission can limit the number of individuals and or the number of materials. That same language is not in the age-appropriate Age-Appropriate Materials Act. So the fact that this legislature at the same time decided to put it in one but not the other is some indication that they would not want a limit on the number.
Mr. Lacy.
I know there's a lot of questions about or discussion about if a board member's read a book. Have we had a board member challenge a book that they haven't read yet? Do we know of any? If I'm just curious, because I know people have emailed me wanting to know if I've read the book that I challenged. I've read it. I've listened to it on YouTube. You can listen to it for free. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. All right, are we down to the vote? Mr. Johnson, read the amendment, please.
Yeah, just to remind everybody, we were voting on Ms. Andrews' amendment to remove school board member from the list of people that can challenge a book. And with that, Ms. Hayes? Yes. Ms. Lancaster? A yes vote would remove school board member, a no vote would not. Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. King?
No.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes.
Why is it not here? Mr. Graham?
No.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacy?
No.
Chairman Brewer?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-4.
We're back on the original motion now. Ready to vote on that? Let's do a roll call vote. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I just had one question for Mr. Lancaster, where we had talked about going ahead and waiving second reading so that y'all have something in place, with the understanding that we would put this policy on the study session in May so that y'all could further study about it, but just to go ahead and adopt it so that we had something for Perks of being a Wallflower for next month. Is that something that we're still interested in, Mr. Lancaster, or?
I mean, I think there's so much that could still come out on this that I would rather we could have 2 readings. We can come back and look at some issues. If we need to move perks, I mean, by next month, we're almost in summertime anyway. And
Okay.
so
All right.
if we need to move perks to June, that's fine with me. So.
All right, thank you for the clarification. And with that, we are voting on the main motion.
I think it's appropriate, if Mr. Lacy's the one that made that recommendation about the book, and so we continue to move that off, so I think it's appropriate to let him say something about that.
Well, I guess say something about the other, if I may. Somebody mentioned that there's websites that you can go to that help you to remove a book. There's also a lot of websites that help you protect books that should be removed, like the ALA. Their job is to help prevent books from being removed, and that's a trusted source that people go to try to protect books.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. All right.
All right, we are voting on the main motion. Ms. Hayes?
Can you state the main motion one more time?
Okay, so the main motion is to approve the policy as amended. The only amendment we have made to this policy tonight is that we have removed school board member from the list of challengers.
And this is first reading, correct?
This is first reading. It will go to the study session and reappear in May. And with that, Ms. Hayes was a yes.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster? Yes. Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Mr. King?
No.
Ms. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels? Was not present. Mr. Graham?
No.
Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Lacy?
No.
Chairman Brewer?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-3.
All right, next item on the agenda, discussion and action to approve updated William and Martha Brown Memorial Park boundary map. Dr. Phillips.
So this is we did this some time ago with the state and the will that was left to us graciously by William and Martha Brown. All we're doing is finalizing the plat map of the school community park, and we already have one that's been approved, but this one is a little bit smaller, so it's just a smaller footprint, and so we just want to make sure it's exactly accurate by meets and bounds to submit to the state. There's no school district or county money involved in this.
I have a question.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Dr. Phillips, I'm not very good at reading plat maps. Is this anywhere near where the sinkholes are along?
No, this is actually on our campus.
On the other okay.
Yeah. It's kind of between the middle school and the elementary school. Encompasses Mr. Brown's house and that area.
Thanks, sir.
All right, now all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding the revision to policy 6.310, dress code upon second reading. Motion approved by Ms. Andrews, second by Mr. Lancaster. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item, discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the general purpose budget. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Ms. Andrews, second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
Show hands on those? Okay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the federal budget. Motion approved by Ms. Andrews, second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Discussion and interaction regarding study session items. Mr. Graham had one that he brought up that you'd like to put on there, Mr. Johnson. What do you have?
I have that we will have our update on third grade retention. We will be talking about this library policy that we were just talking about, and then we will also have we will talk about the discussion of perks of being a wallflower, which I guess we pushed that to June now, so I guess that will come off. Yeah, so.
Mr. Lacey, we'll just ask you which one to do. Just let us know, okay?
All right, next
I have a
item.
quick question. And I may be wrong. I have on my calendar that we had May the 9th as our budget workshop. That is our budget workshop as well?
Yes, so that'll be a budget workshop as well, and then we can, I guess what we'll probably do is like a hybrid, a study session and a budget workshop. But that's something we can discuss with the chairman or.
I shouldn't know if we'll have enough time to do both in the same night, so.
We may want to discuss with you guys having a separate time for budget that is a different meeting. I'm not sure. We just need to talk to staff and see. Sometimes it's usually the weekend between the meetings. But we'll talk to the chairman about that.
A study session, we can't, it's gotta be, what, 3 hours? I mean, it's 6 to 9, right? So you can't, yeah.
We'll talk to the chairman and try to figure out the best thing. We don't want it to be crowded.
All right. Next item on the agenda is communication from board members. Mr. Lacey, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Like I said, it's an absolute pleasure just to serve the people of District 11. We've been on the board, since October. I was just trying to think. I don't think we've ever discussed school safety as a board together. How are we going to improve the safety of our schools? I just feel like we kind of leave it up to the director to do it all by himself. People ask us when we're running for office, what are you going to do to make the school safer? I remember the newspaper asked us, that was some of the questions. I would like to see us have a study session on how we could improve the safety of our schools. We've had a lot of parents that were scared. They've emailed us with different things that they would like to see happen. But, I think that'd be a great opportunity for us to have a study session. One thing that I've noticed as I've been a school board member since October, just like in our school systems, we have 3 different locking systems for doors. Why do we have 3 different locking mechanisms? Which one's the safer? If we had an active shooter. And so that's some things that I would like for us to look into. What is safer? I know that the state has made suggestions on what they believe might be appropriate. But, let's look at that. Look at common sense policies. I talked to a teacher that was actually a teacher in Tipton County. She mentioned at her school, it made her feel really safe there. She's a teacher here now. But when you go to buzz in, they won't let you in until you show them your driver's license. And they kind of vetted who you are before you even come in the school building. Don't want our schools to be like a prison, but like I said, we want to protect our kids. Like I said, I think it'd be a great opportunity for us to actually make a positive change for the safety of our kids.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Mr. Gregory?
No comment.
Mr. Graham?
I got three things. So first, I want to say thank you to Dr. Langford and Ms. Hessen and y'all's team for really putting together all this information regarding third grade retention. Because when you look at it on the state level and you look at flow charts, it looks like IKEA instructions. So I appreciate you breaking that down, and I've had a lot of good feedback on that. I know it's frustrating for everybody, and I appreciate the Facebook Live coming tomorrow. Hopefully we'll share all that and make sure as many third grade families have access to that. Secondly, I'd like for this board one day to draft and adopt a resolution to send to the state to beg and urge and plead to end this TCAP nonsense, where it has so much weight and bearing on our students' achievement and on our teachers' in their reviews. I understand the need for data. Education is data driven, but there's so much pressure and there's so much anxiety for parents, for students, for teachers, for everyone. So maybe one day in the future we can just kind of draft some language to send to the state, and I would hope other school boards would do the same. And then thirdly, and this is a lighter moment, Liberty Creek High School Wolfpack Players is having their first annual spring musical, All Shook Up. Tickets are currently on sale. They're $10 per ticket. The shows are Friday at 7 p.m., Saturday at 2 p.m. I won't make it to that one, so if you want to avoid me, that's the one to go to. And Sunday at 2 p.m. as well. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mr. Daniels?
Thank you. I do echo Mr. Graham, when it comes to TCAP and the stress that it's putting on a lot of our kids, especially the third graders and their parents. I know a student yesterday that went to the ER having trouble breathing, and the message I got from his dad said that the doctor said he thinks it's just anxiety. With all the stress that's going on, whether it was caused by the testing or something else, I don't know, but that's obviously one more layer, one more thing that some of our students have to deal with. But, I commend our teachers. They spent a lot of time this year trying to get our students ready for the test. I wish we could get to the point where it wasn't always teaching to a test. We were doing, and I think our teachers do more than that. I don't want to say that our teachers just teach to the test, but that is something that they also have to be aware of. But these next couple weeks are pretty stressful for our teachers and our students, so my prayers are with them. So.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Ms. Hawkins?
Yes, I want to thank Mr. Lacy for voicing concerns about security. I think I could speak for all of us that we all have concerns. But I specifically, in last year's budget meeting, I asked specifically, are all of our schools up to date on the security? And Dr. Phillips assured me that we are top-notch. All of our schools are top-notch secure. And I still have concerns. I mean, I don't think you can ever feel 100% safe. I have had private conversations with central office about my personal concerns, but I'm not going to say them here in an open meeting because I don't want to give anybody any ideas. So if I'm quiet about this, it's because I am not wanting to discuss this openly. And I think when you're talking security, you have to be, you don't want to tell people, well, this doesn't work and that doesn't work. No, those are things where you don't want to give people ideas. You don't want to give people openings. So I am having private conversations about my concerns. But it's a fine line as to what we can discuss openly here for the safety of our children and staff.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. King?
Yeah, so my kid's bus broke down today on the way home. And, but you know what? It was really great because within 5 minutes, something like that, 10 minutes, they had another bus. And and they made it home real quick. So I was really thankful for that. And on that note, it got me thinking about bus driver recruiting and all that. I would like to maybe on a study session discuss ways we can improve how we recruit drivers, and put out incentives for them to come and work and drive for us. I have a friend who used to drive for Sumner County, and he had some ideas that I think I think it'd be good to share, that I think are pretty good. So just in the future, maybe in May on a study session, I would like to have let's get a rundown of our bus drivers' transportation. I'd like to learn about it and see if there's anything we can do to make things better. But I think they're good now. I was really happy with that my kids made it home today. So thank you to our drivers. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. King. Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, thank you. I want to say thank you to Chase Moore and his staff for an outstanding CTE Day. Last week, held that at Bagsby Ranch. It's our annual CTE Day. Is one of my favorite events. I asked him a couple of months ago to make sure I had it on my calendar because it's just a day I don't want to miss. It's a great day where we highlight our students and our teachers and just the programs and offerings that they have. We had a couple of the robotics programs that were there. We had, I think it's FBLA, Neil kill me, state president, she's at Beach High School. She spoke. We had I think PT student from Station Camp and a welding student from Middle Technical, and they did a great job. It was great to hear directly from the students. So, a lot of times you don't hear all the great things, there's about public schools and what we offer, and I can get on a soapbox and I can talk to you all day long about our CTE programs and just how proud I am and the opportunities that those provide. So kudos to Chase and his group. Speaking of CTE, my second favorite event of this year is coming up. It is the Pig Dig. If you are not aware of what the Pig Dig is in Sumner County, it's another event that I can get on soapbox and talk about. Essentially, it is held at Gallatin High School, and it's a collaboration of all of our criminal justice, or several of the criminal justice programs. I don't know that they all participate, but it's typically a week-long event. And so this past summer, Mr. Pascarella buried a pig somewhere on Gallatin High School's campus. So it has been decomposing for a year. And the very first day will be the day that the students discover a crime has been committed. The year I went, they had found a car that had a bullet hole in it, and there was blood, and they had to then assess the scene and take evidence and figure out who the victim was, and it went through a process. On Wednesday is when the suspect confessed and told them where the body was, and then they had to suit up. They get the local Gallatin Police Department involved and the Sheriff's Department, and they have to find the body. They collect that evidence, and then Thursday and Friday is the trial. So it is, and we get our local judges and stuff involved, so it is a truly community event that just highlights the different aspects of that particular CTE program. So if you hear about the Pig Dig, if you have a chance, I think it's the week of May 8th, I think is what she told me it was. Week of May 8th. So if you go by Gallatin High School and there's a bunch of law enforcement and stuff there, just know it may be the Pig Dig. And then closing, Mr. Cordell sat next to me for several years, and this time of year he would always mention, we are in prom season, we are in graduation season. And as exciting as it is, time for these students, it's also a time of year where tragedy a lot of times strikes. So I just ask that you continue to keep these students in your thoughts and prayers, that they will make good choices and that they'll drive safely.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Lancaster.
I don't know how to follow up the Pig Dig, but hope it's PETA approved. It's Sarah Andrews at Sumner School. No, I've got a third grader, so I can speak to experience with what a lot of our parents are going through right now. I had one that lost a tooth a couple of weeks ago. She's 9, and our tooth fairy failed to make a visit. I put him on the list. You know, he will likely not, you know, he will likely be replaced with a much smarter tooth fairy. But saying that, and then dropping her off this morning, and on the way to school, you know, I take them every day, and my wife picks them up. That's kind of our, you know, dad time for all the 5 minutes. Sometimes that's too much for him, I think. But you know, I was like, well, just good luck. You know, do your best. And I'm proud of you no matter what. And she's like, well, are you going to be mad if I don't score a 3? And I was like, well, no, I'm not going to be mad if you do your best. You know, that's all I care about. But that's, you know, she's so worried that she's going to be in this 1 or 2 range. And I mean, she's, based on the screener, she's a 3. I don't know. She could have a bad day. And that's where I get mad at this law, and I think I've stated my frustration. Last week, for example, I'm booking a condo for June because I got one that's in dance. She has, I mean, our summer calendar is like probably most of y'all's. You got blocked here, and then of course Vanderbilt's year end is June 30th, so almost all of July is blocked, and then school starts August 1st or July 3rd. You know, so it's like a finite window that I can go on vacation. And so booked a vacation June 9th through the whatever, and don't want y'all to know exactly when I'm going to be gone, but sitting there in my head, I'm like, well, you know, what if she has a real bad day, you know? I've got to make a decision, you know, are we going? Of course, I got the one that, you know, I've got till May the 9th to get 50% of my money back. You know, after May 9th, I don't get any of my money back. So if we got an online option, I appreciate that. But that's the kind of craziness that I'm having to deal with a 9-year-old daughter who I would have hoped the worst thing she had to worry about the last 2 weeks was the fact that the tooth fairy didn't show up one day, and now she's got a test over the next 2 weeks that they say, hey, you're not smart enough, basically, to go to 4th grade. So that's I know a lot of people are dealing with this. I've talked to a lot of them. You know, a lot of them have reached out to me at my kids' school and at other kids' schools because, you know, I share a lot of this because it's real for me. I know it's real for a lot of people, but it's really real for me. But I don't like it, and I do appreciate everything that our kids our teachers are going through to get them ready for this. I think they're as ready as they possibly can be. But it's still, it all depends on how well they do today or this week and next week. And so I think it's crazy. So.
Interesting question, Ms. Hayes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Brewer. I agree, Mr. Lancaster. Ludicrous. There's so many other things that the state legislators could be spending their time on. But to Mr. Lacey's point with school safety, I think it would be a great opportunity to have Katie Brown speak to us at a study session. Just give us what we do, how well we do it, what you're even working toward, that you're already doing that.
Look, kind of like Ms. Hawkins mentioned, I think it's best if you utilize what the state law allows you to do. We do not want to sit here and have a discussion about the things that we're doing or that we have done. No one does that. We're more than happy to have plenty of time in a dedicated study session for Katie and SRO, leadership, and others to come, and it will just be you all. And the state law provides that. There are very few things that we can do just as a group. Very few. It's very restricted. Several years ago, the state added school security. So you can, among yourselves and staff, we can talk to you about that, and we're more than happy to do that, okay? And we'll plan that. Because we want you to know. We don't necessarily want that to be just general public knowledge. Does that make sense? And so we'll plan to do that and get that scheduled for sometime soon. We're already talking about some things that may impact the budget that we would like to do in some phases over the course of the summer into the fall. And so it's going to be good timing for us to talk about that, so when you hear about those things, you'll know what they are, if that's okay with everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Thank you, Ms. Brown. And our SROs. Appreciate you all. And I think one of them, addressing the bus drivers, Andrew, you could just give us an update. I know you're working on some recruiting plans. And also, for some of the board members who have not, the new ones who have not visited the Rigsby building, they would welcome you to visit. That was one of the first things I did, was go out and check out the IT. You're going to get a tour, and the bus shop, the maintenance. I mean, it's a well-oiled machine. And also, that's where they do purchasing, materials, materials management. It's phenomenal. So I know you might even get to.
You can sit in the bus.
Can I sit in the bus? We can't drive a bus unless we have the license to drive. But thank you. I thank you for what you do. I think that's everything I jotted down. I appreciate all the work that's been done. I agree. The third grade retention, fabulous, phenomenal. Just to have to step back and punt and redo it and wait on what the state law, what they're deciding. So I just appreciate all the hours that have been spent on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. I will get with Dr. Langford and go over the change with him. And if he signs it, that will become his contract. If he don't, we'll see it again on the next meeting. And with that, we're adjourned.